Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I've been with the FBI for 20 years now, working out of the El Paso field office, and I thought I'd seen everything West Texas had to offer. The desert has a way of keeping secrets, holding them in the dry wind and endless sky until they fade into dust and memory. But nothing prepared me for what we found on that abandoned stretch between Odessa and Pecos. My name is Reeves Halden, Special Agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is my account of what happened in the fall of 2023, and I'm writing it down because the official report doesn't tell the whole story. It can't. There are things that happened out there that don't fit into boxes on government forms. Things that make you question what you know about the world. It started with a missing person case that shouldn't have been ours. Local matter, really. A truck driver named Vernon Pike failed to complete his route from Midland to El Paso. His rig was found at an abandoned rest stop off Highway 285. Engine still running, driver's door hanging open. No sign of Vernon, no sign of struggle. Just an empty cab with half a cup of coffee still warm on the dashboard, and a ham sandwich with one bite taken out of it sitting on the passenger seat. The Reeves County Sheriff's Department handled it initially. Standard procedure. They searched the area, found nothing, filed their reports. Then 2 weeks later, another one. Sandra Meeks, a pharmaceutical sales rep driving through on her way to a conference in Carlsbad. Her Honda was found at the same rest stop, keys in the ignition, purse on the seat, phone showing the last call made to her husband at 9:47 p.m. She told him she was pulling over to check her tire pressure. She never made it home. When the third disappearance happened, the FBI got involved. That's when I got the call from Field Marshal Denton Rourke, my supervisor. He wanted me to drive out there with my partner, Marta Elwood, and take a look. 3 missing persons from the same location in 6 weeks was a pattern, and patterns are what we pay attention to. Marta and I left El Paso just after dawn. The drive took us through miles of nothing, the kind of landscape that makes you understand why people go crazy out here. Flat, brown earth stretching to the horizon in every direction, broken only by the occasional pump jack nodding slowly like a prehistoric bird drinking from the ground. The sky was that washed-out blue you only get in the desert, pale and infinite. Tell me again why we're driving 4 hours to look at an empty parking lot, Marta said. She was driving, one hand on the wheel, the other holding a travel mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Marta was good people, the kind of agent who did everything by the book, but never lost sight of the fact that we were dealing with real lives, real families waiting for answers. Because 3 people don't just vanish from the same spot without a reason, I said. And because Rourke thinks there might be something we're missing. What does local PD think? They think it's a serial. Someone watching the rest stop, waiting for solo travelers. But there's no evidence of that, no witnesses, no surveillance footage, no forensics. There's never nothing, Marta said. There's always something. She was right, of course. There's always something. That's what they teach you at Quantico, what 20 years of field work confirms over and over. Evidence doesn't lie, and it doesn't disappear completely. You just have to know where to look. We reached the rest stop a little after 11. It was exactly as depressing as I'd expected. The place had been shut down by the State Highway Department maybe 5 years ago, left to decay in the relentless Texas sun. The main building was a low concrete structure, windows boarded up, walls covered in faded graffiti. The parking lot was cracked asphalt. weeds pushing through the gaps. There were old-style parking spaces marked out for trucks on one side, cars on the other, and a few picnic tables under a rusted metal awning. The whole place had that abandoned feeling, that sense of a space that people had left behind and forgotten. Except people hadn't forgotten it. 3 people had stopped here, and none of them had left. We parked next to a Reeves County Sheriff's cruiser. Deputy named Carter was supposed to meet us, show us around. I saw him sitting in the driver's seat, window down, hat pulled low over his eyes. Marta and I got out, and I heard the crunch of gravel under my boots, the whistle of wind through the empty building. It was hot, the kind of dry heat that pulls moisture from your skin, makes you reach for water every few minutes. "Deputy Carter?" I called out. He stirred, pushed his hat back, looked at us with eyes that had seen too many long shifts and not enough sleep. He was maybe 50, weathered face, the kind of cop who'd spent his whole career in small-town Texas and never wanted to be anywhere else. "You, the FBI?" he asked, climbing out of the cruiser. "Special Agent Halden, this is Special Agent Elwood," I said, showing him my credentials. "We appreciate you meeting us out here." Carter nodded, spit into the dirt. "Don't know what you're expecting to find that we didn't already see, but you're welcome to look. Place gives me the creeps, to be honest." "How so?" Marta asked. He shrugged. "Just does. Been patrolling this highway for 23 years. Never had a problem with this rest stop when it was open. Now it's like, I don't know. Something's off about it." I'd heard that kind of talk before. Cops develop instincts, gut feelings about places and people. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're just spooked by shadows. But I made a mental note of it anyway. "Walk us through what you found," I said. Carter led us across the parking lot toward the truck spaces. The asphalt was buckled and broken here, and I could see oil stains from years of big rigs idling in the Texas heat. He stopped at one spot, pointed down. "First victim, Vernon Pike, his rig was here. Engine running, driver's door open, no sign of Pike. We searched a 2-mile radius, brought in dogs, checked every building and drainage ditch, nothing." "What about his phone?" Marta asked. "Found it in the cab. Last call was to his dispatcher, right on schedule. Said he was taking a 30-minute break, everything normal. That was 2:15 a.m. Dispatcher tried calling him back at 3:30 when he didn't check in. No answer. By the time we got here at dawn, the truck was the way I described." We walked to another spot, this one near the car spaces. "Second victim, Sandra Meeks. Car here, engine off, keys in the ignition. She called her husband around 9:47 p.m., said she was checking her tire pressure. Husband waited an hour, tried calling back, no answer. He called us around midnight. We found the car at 1:15 a.m. "Tire pressure actually low?" I asked. Carter shook his head. "All 4 tires perfect. No reason for her to stop." Third victim was a man named Daniel Cortez, electrician from Carlsbad. His van was found at the rest stop at dawn, same pattern. Engine off, keys present, wallet and phone in the vehicle. No sign of the driver. "Any common factors between the 3? I asked. "Time of day, weather conditions, anything?" "All at night," Carter said. "All between midnight and 3 a.m., all solo travelers. Other than that, nothing connects them. Different ages, different backgrounds, different reasons for being on the road." Marta was taking notes, photographing the area with her phone. She walked over to the main building, tried the door. It was locked, a heavy chain wrapped around the handles. "Anyone been inside since it closed?" "Not that we know of," Carter said. "Highway department locked it up when they decommissioned the rest stop. We checked it after the first disappearance, but there was no sign of forced entry. No evidence anyone had been inside." I looked around, trying to see the place the way the victims would have seen it. dark highway, middle of nowhere. Desperate need for a bathroom break or to stretch your legs. You pull in even though the place is obviously closed, because it's the only spot for 50 miles. You get out of your vehicle, and then... What? Were the vehicles locked when you found them? I asked. Pike's truck was unlocked, door open. Meeks and Cortez, doors closed but unlocked. That was interesting. If someone had taken them by force, you'd expect signs of struggle. Doors left open. Maybe belongings scattered. But these were neat, almost careful. Like the victims had gotten out of their vehicles willingly, locked the doors behind them, and walked away. Except they hadn't walked away. There was nowhere to walk to. We spent the next 2 hours going over the site, measuring distances, taking samples of the soil, photographing every angle. Marta found some old tire tracks, but they could have been from anyone, from any time in the past 5 years. I found a few cigarette butts near the picnic tables, collected them for DNA analysis, knowing it probably wouldn't lead anywhere. The sun was directly overhead when we finished, heat shimmering off the asphalt in waves. Carter had gone back to his cruiser, was sitting in the air conditioning, radio crackling with some distant conversation between dispatchers. Marta and I stood in the middle of the parking lot looking around at the emptiness. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think 3 people are missing and we don't have a single solid lead," I said. "But I also think Carter's right. Something's off about this place. You getting a bad feeling, Reeves?" I was, but I didn't want to say it out loud. Not yet. FBI agents don't work on bad feelings. We work on evidence and facts and logical deduction. But yeah, I was getting a bad feeling. The place was too quiet, too still. Even the wind seemed to die when it reached this spot, leaving everything in a kind of suffocating silence. "Let's check with Highway Department, see if we can get inside that building," I said. "And I want to pull traffic camera footage from the highway, see if we can track the victims' arrival times, see if anyone else stopped here around the same time." Marta nodded. "I'll call it in, get the warrant started." We drove back to Pecos, checked into a motel that had seen better days but at least had working air conditioning and Wi-Fi. I spent the evening on the phone with Rourke, briefing him on what we'd found, which was essentially nothing. He wasn't surprised. "These cases are always the hardest," he said. "No body, no crime scene, no witnesses, just empty space and questions. You ever work anything like this before?" I asked. There was a pause on the line, long enough that I thought we'd lost connection. Then Rourke said, "Once. Long time ago, up in Montana. Woman disappeared from a rest stop on I-90. Never found her. Never found any evidence of what happened. Case went cold, stayed cold. Sometimes people just vanish, Reeves. It's the part of this job that nobody likes to talk about." After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the case file spread out in front of me. 3 faces stared back at me from their driver's license photos. Vernon Pike, 53, divorced, 2 grown kids. Sandra Meeks, 38, married, no children. Daniel Cortez, 41, single, lived alone. 3 ordinary people, living ordinary lives who made the mistake of stopping at the wrong place at the wrong time. I fell asleep around midnight, the files still scattered across the bed, the air conditioner rattling in the window. I dreamed about the rest stop, about standing in that empty parking lot under a sky full of stars, waiting for something I couldn't name. In the dream, I heard a voice calling my name, distant and distorted, like a radio signal breaking up. I walked toward the sound, toward the dark building with its boarded windows, and just as I reached the door, I woke up. The room was dark, the red glow of the alarm clock showing 3:17 a.m. I lay there listening to the silence, and for reasons I couldn't explain, I felt grateful to be in this cheap motel room and not out there in the desert, alone in the dark. We got access to the rest stop building 2 days later. The highway department sent someone out with keys. A supervisor named Bill Hutchins, who didn't seem thrilled about being pulled away from his office to babysit a couple of federal agents. He was a big man, probably played football in high school, now running to fat in his 50s, wearing a polo shirt with the state highway logo and jeans that had never seen a day of actual work. "Don't know what you expect to find in there," he said, working the lock with the hands that shook slightly. I noticed that, filed it away. "Place has been locked up since 2018. Nobody's been inside except for our safety inspection crew, and that was 3 years ago." The chain came off with a rattle of metal on metal. Hutchins pulled the door open, and we were hit with a wave of stale air that smelled like dust and decay and something else. Something I couldn't quite identify. It wasn't rot, not exactly, but it was organic, unpleasant. "Jesus," Marta said, covering her nose. "When's the last time anyone opened this place up?" "Like I said, 3 years," Hutchins said. He didn't make any move to go inside. "You want me to wait out here?" "Yeah, that'd be fine," I said. "We'll let you know when we're done." Marta and I stepped inside, and Hutchins pulled the door shut behind us, leaving us in darkness. I pulled out my flashlight, clicked it on, and the beam cut through the gloom to reveal what had once been a standard highway rest stop facility. We were in a small lobby area, maybe 20 feet by 20 feet. There was an information board on one wall. The papers behind the glass yellowed and curled with age. A drinking fountain that probably hadn't worked in a decade. 2 hallways led off from the lobby, one marked men and one marked women. The floor was covered in a fine layer of dust, undisturbed except for our own footprints. That was the first thing that struck me. If anyone had been in here recently, we'd see their tracks. But there was nothing, just dust and silence and that strange smell. We checked the restrooms first, Marta taking the women's, me taking the men's. Standard facilities, nothing special. Stalls with doors hanging at odd angles, sinks dry and stained, mirrors cracked and clouded. I ran my flashlight over every surface, looking for anything out of place, any sign that someone had been here. Nothing. When we met back in the lobby, Marta was frowning. "This is a waste of time," she said. "There's nothing here." "Maybe," I said. "But let's check the whole building before we give up." There was a maintenance room at the back, accessed through a door marked "Employees Only." The lock was broken, the door hanging open a few inches. I pushed it wider, shined my light inside. The room was maybe 10 feet square, filled with old cleaning supplies and broken furniture. A metal shelving unit held bottles of industrial cleaner, most of them dried up or crystallized. There was a desk in the corner, covered in dust, a few papers scattered across its surface. I walked over to the desk, careful not to disturb anything, and looked at the papers. They were work schedules from 2018, the last year the rest stop was operational. Names I didn't recognize, shifts assigned. Someone's handwriting noting that the ice machine was broken again and needed repair. Underneath the schedules, I found something else. A logbook, the kind maintenance workers use to track repairs and inspections. I picked it up carefully, flipped through the pages. The entries stopped in August 2018, right around the time the rest stop closed. The last entry was dated August 23rd, written in a different hand than the others, shakier, less controlled. Checked all systems. Lights in parking lot flickering again, Sector 3. Radio interference on emergency band, probably atmospheric. Something wrong with the air tonight. I read it twice, trying to understand what it meant. Something wrong with the air, what did that mean? "Reeves, come look at this," Marta called from the lobby. I tucked the logbook under my arm, walked back out. Marta was standing near the information board, her flashlight pointed at something on the wall. When I got closer, I saw what she was looking at. Someone had written on the wall in what looked like pencil, very faint, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. The words were simple, repeated over and over in a column. "Come back. Come back, come back, come back." Maybe 20 repetitions, all in the same shaky hand. The writing was low on the wall, about knee height, like someone had been sitting or kneeling when they wrote it. "That's new," Marta said quietly. "Or at least it wasn't in the inspection reports." "How do you know?" "Because I read every word of those reports last night. There was no mention of graffiti inside the building." I took photos of the writing, measured its position, bagged a sample where the pencil had worn into the paint. If we were lucky, we might get DNA from skin cells or sweat, might be able to match it to one of the missing persons. We finished searching the building, found nothing else of interest. When we stepped back outside, the sunlight was almost blinding after the darkness inside. Hutchins was leaning against his truck, smoking a cigarette, and he straightened up when he saw us. "Find what you were looking for?" he asked. "Hard to say," I said. "Tell me about the electrical problems." He looked confused. "What electrical problems?" "The logbook mentions lights flickering, radio interference. Was that a regular issue?" Hutchins shrugged. "Not that I remember. But this place was always a low priority, you know. State built it back in the 70s when there was more traffic on this route, but once the interstate expanded, nobody used it anymore. We kept it open out of habit more than necessity." "Why'd you finally close it?" "Budget cuts. Wasn't worth the maintenance costs for the handful of people who stopped here every week." We let Hutchins lock the building back up, watched him drive away in his state truck. Marta and I stood in the parking lot, and I felt that same unease I'd felt on our first visit. The silence was wrong, too heavy, too complete. "You want to set up surveillance?" Marta asked. "See if anyone else stops here?" It was a good idea, standard procedure. But something made me hesitate. The thought of sitting out here in the dark, watching this empty place, waiting for something to happen, it made my skin crawl in a way I didn't want to examine too closely. "Yeah," I said. "Let's coordinate with local PD, set up cameras on the highway approaches, maybe put a couple of unmarked units in position with a view of the parking lot. And if someone stops, we move in, make contact, make sure they're safe, and we ask them why they chose this particular rest stop when there are better options up and down the highway." We spent the rest of the day setting up the operation. Deputy Carter was surprisingly helpful, seemed almost relieved that we were taking an active approach. He coordinated with the highway patrol to get permission for the camera placements, helped us identify good positions for the unmarked units. By nightfall, we had eyes on every approach to the rest stop. 2 cameras on the highway, covering both directions of traffic. 1 unmarked unit positioned about a quarter-mile north, another a quarter-mile south, both with clear sight lines to the parking lot. Marta and I were in a third vehicle, parked off the highway on a dirt access road that gave us a view of the entire rest stop. The sun went down around 7, and we settled in for what we knew would be a long night. Marta had brought coffee and sandwiches, and we took turns watching and dozing, keeping in radio contact with the other units. Nothing happened for the first 3 hours. A few vehicles passed on the highway, but nobody slowed down. Nobody pulled into the rest stop. The parking lot stayed empty, the building dark and silent. Around 10 p.m., I was watching through binoculars when I noticed something odd. The lights we'd seen in the parking lot during our daytime visits, the old, pole-mounted fixtures that hadn't worked in years, one of them was flickering. "Marta," I said quietly. She was awake instantly, reaching for her own binoculars. What is it? Look at the northwest pole light. She looked, was silent for a moment. That shouldn't be working. Hutchins said they cut power to this place years ago. I know. We watched the light flicker for maybe 10 minutes, a weak, irregular pulse that seemed to have no pattern. Then it went dark again, and the parking lot returned to complete darkness. Could be a short in the wiring, Marta said, but she didn't sound convinced. Residual charge in the system. Could be, I agreed, not convinced either. At 11:47 p.m., our radio crackled to life. It was the unit to the north, deputy named Morrison. We've got a vehicle slowing down. Looks like it might pull in. I grabbed the radio. Do not approach unless they stop. Just observe and report. Copy that. Through the binoculars, I saw headlights swing off the highway into the rest stop parking lot. It was a sedan. Looked like a Toyota or Honda, hard to tell in the darkness. The car pulled into one of the parking spaces near the building, and the engine cut off. All units, we have a vehicle at the rest stop, I said into the radio. Stand by. The driver's door opened, and someone got out. In the darkness, I couldn't make out features. Just a silhouette. They stood by the car for a moment, looking around, then started walking toward the building. We need to move, Marta said. Wait, I said. Let's see what they do. The figure reached the building, tried the door. It was locked, of course. They stepped back, seemed to be looking at the boarded windows. Then they did something odd. They raised one hand, like they were waving, or reaching for something we couldn't see. What are they doing? Marta asked. Before I could answer, the figure turned and walked back toward their car. But they didn't get in. Instead, they walked past it, kept walking toward the back of the parking lot, toward the darkness beyond the reach of our binoculars. Shit, I said. All units, subject is mobile, moving toward the rear of the lot. We're going in. We were moving before the radio acknowledgments came back. Marta driving. Me on the radio coordinating with the other units. It took us maybe 3 minutes to reach the rest stop, and by the time we pulled in, Morrison's unit was already there, spotlights illuminating the parking lot. The sedan was still there, driver's door standing open. But there was no sign of the driver. We searched for 2 hours, 4 deputies and 2 federal agents, covering every inch of ground around the rest stop. We found tracks leading away from the parking lot, going east into the desert, but they just stopped after about 50 feet. Not faded out, not covered by wind, just stopped, like the person making them had ceased to exist mid-step. The sedan belonged to a man named Marcus Webb, 29, software developer from Austin, driving to Albuquerque for a job interview. His phone was in the car, his wallet, his overnight bag, everything except Marcus Webb. We called for more units, started a full-scale search at dawn, brought in tracking dogs, which picked up a scent from the car and followed it to the exact spot where the footprints ended, then sat down and whined, refusing to go further. At 8:33 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from our technical analyst back at the field office. They'd pulled the highway camera footage from the previous night, and there was something I needed to see. Marta and I watched the footage on my laptop, sitting in our vehicle with the air conditioning running to fight off the building heat. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., and we could see Webb's sedan approaching from the north, exactly as we'd observed. But there was something else in the footage, something we hadn't seen through the binoculars. Just before the car pulled into the rest stop, there was a flash of something on the camera, a distortion in the image, like heat shimmer or interference. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, then cleared. "Back it up," Marta said. I replayed the section frame by frame. The distortion appeared, grew stronger, then faded. And in one frame right at the peak of the interference, there was a shape in it. Not clear, not defined, but definitely there. It was tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet, and it didn't move like a person. It seemed to pulse, to shift, like it wasn't entirely solid. "What the hell is that?" Marta asked. "I don't know," I said. "Camera malfunction, maybe. Heat signature from a passing vehicle. At midnight? In West Texas in October?" She was right. There was no good explanation for what we were seeing. And when I checked the timestamp on the frame where the shape was most visible, my hands started to shake. The timestamp was 11:47:36 p.m. And then the next frame was 11:47:36 p.m. again. The same second, recorded twice. I checked the metadata, thinking it was an error in the file, a glitch in the recording system. But the metadata was clean. As far as the camera was concerned, the second between 11:47:36 and 11:47:37 had happened twice. "That's not possible," Marta said. "I know." We reported our findings to Rourke, sent him the footage, waited for his response. When he called back 2 hours later, he sounded tired and frustrated. "Our technical team can't explain it," he said. "They're saying it's either a camera malfunction or a file corruption error, but they can't reproduce the issue or identify the cause. As for the shape in the interference, they're calling it pareidolia, our brains finding patterns in random noise. You don't believe that any more than I do," I said. "What I believe doesn't matter. What matters is evidence, and right now, we don't have anything that would stand up in court or even in a case brief. 4 people are missing, and all we have are questions." After we hung up, Marta and I sat in silence for a while, watching the rest stop through the windshield. In the harsh morning light, it looked ordinary, harmless. Just another piece of abandoned infrastructure slowly being reclaimed by the desert. "We need to stay another night," I said. "Run the surveillance again. See if we can catch whatever's happening here." Marta looked at me, and I saw the same unease in her eyes that I was feeling. But she nodded. "Yeah, we do." The second night of surveillance started the same as the first. We had the same setup, the same positions, the same equipment. But there was a different feeling to it, a tension that hadn't been there before. Everyone involved in the operation knew what we'd found, knew that Marcus Webb had vanished just like the others, knew that there was something about this place that didn't make sense. Deputy Morrison brought us dinner around 6, burgers from a diner in Pecos, and we ate in our vehicle while the sun set behind us. The temperature was dropping fast, the way it does in the desert, from 90 degrees to 60 in a matter of hours. "You really think someone will stop here again?" Morrison asked. He was young, maybe 26, with the kind of eagerness that comes from working a small-town beat and hoping for something more exciting. "They did last night," he said, "and 3 times before that. Whatever's drawing people here, it's still active." "You think it's a person? Like a serial killer working out of the building or something?" Marta and I exchanged a look. That had been our first theory, the most logical explanation. But the more time I spent at this place, the less I believed it. Serial killers leave evidence. They leave traces of their presence, patterns that can be analyzed and predicted. This was different. This was something else. "We're keeping an open mind," I said, which was FBI speak for, "We have no idea what we're dealing with." Morrison left around 7, and we settled into our positions. The night was clear. Stars coming out in that way they do when you're far from city lights, thousands of them dusting the sky. Under different circumstances, it would have been beautiful. But all I could think about was Webb, walking away from his car into the darkness, disappearing mid-step like he'd crossed some invisible threshold into nothing. At 9:15 p.m., our radio crackled with interference. It was harsh, loud, like static, but with an underlying pulse to it, almost rhythmic. I grabbed the handset, tried to respond to the other units, but the interference was too strong. I couldn't hear anything except that pulsing static. "What the hell?" Marta said, checking her own radio. Same thing, nothing but interference. The interference lasted for maybe 30 seconds, then cleared as suddenly as it had started. When I tried the radio again, I got immediate responses from the other units. They'd all experienced the same thing. "Did anyone see anything during the interference?" I asked. Morrison's voice came back. "Negative. Nothing on our end." The southern unit reported the same. Nothing visible, just the radio interference. I made a note of the time, tried to push down the unease building in my chest. Radio interference wasn't unusual out here. Solar activity, atmospheric conditions, even military operations at the nearby bases could cause it. But the timing felt wrong, too coincidental. At 11:34 p.m., the interference came back. This time, it was worse, the pulse more defined, almost like Morse code but in no pattern I recognized. And underneath it, so faint I almost missed it, there was a sound. A voice, maybe, or something that sounded like a voice saying the same thing over and over. I grabbed my notebook, tried to write down what I was hearing, but it was too distorted, too broken up. The only word I could make out, repeated in that static-filled voice, was "back." Or maybe "come." It was impossible to be sure. The interference cleared, and this time I immediately radioed the other units. "Did anyone else hear that? The voice in the interference?" There was a long pause. Then Morrison, "I heard something. Couldn't make it out, though." "Same," the southern unit reported. Sounded like, I don't know, someone talking through a broken speaker. Marta was staring at me, her face pale in the dashboard lights. "That's what was written on the wall," she said quietly. "In the building. Come back." Before I could respond, we saw headlights on the highway. A vehicle was slowing down, signaling to exit. "All units, possible visitor," I said into the radio, fighting to keep my voice calm. "Remember, observe but do not approach unless absolutely necessary. We need to see what happens." The vehicle pulled into the rest stop, a pickup truck this time. It parked in the same general area where Webb had parked the night before, maybe 20 feet from the building. The engine cut off and we waited. Through the binoculars, I watched the driver's door open. A woman got out, looked around. She was wearing jeans and a jacket, had long hair pulled back in a ponytail. She stood by the truck for a moment, hands in her pockets, then started walking toward the building. "This is it," Marta said. "We need to move in now before she disappears." But something made me hesitate. I was watching the woman through the binoculars, and there was something about her movements that seemed off. She wasn't walking normally. Each step was too precise, too deliberate, like she was following a path only she could see. She reached the building, touched the wall near where the comeback graffiti was. Then she turned and looked directly at our position. Even from this distance, even in the darkness, I could see her face clearly in the binoculars. She was smiling. "Reeves, we need to go now," Marta said. "Wait," I said. "Something's wrong." The woman turned away from us, started walking toward the back of the parking lot, the same direction Webb had gone. But she wasn't alone. There was something moving with her, beside her, a shadow that was darker than the surrounding darkness. It was the same shape I'd seen in the camera footage, tall and wrong and somehow liquid in the way it moved. "Do you see that?" I asked Marta. "See what?" "I see the woman walking away. The thing next to her, the shadow." Marta raised her own binoculars, adjusted the focus. I don't see anything except her. The woman and the shadow reached the edge of the parking lot, and for just a moment, both seemed to flicker, like a bad television signal. Then they were gone. Not walked into the darkness, not hidden by the terrain. Gone, like they'd been erased. "All units, move in now!" I shouted into the radio. We were out of the vehicle and running before the responses came back. Flashlights cutting through the darkness, boots hammering on broken asphalt. Morrison's unit came from the north, the southern unit from the south, all of us converging on the spot where the woman had vanished. The pickup truck was still there, engine ticking as it cooled, driver's door standing open. I reached it first, shined my flashlight inside. Purse on the passenger seat, phone in the cup holder, jacket thrown across the back seat. Everything except the driver. We spread out, searched the area. Morrison found footprints leading away from the truck, the same as Webb's had been. And just like Webb's, they stopped after about 50 feet. One moment there were clear boot prints in the hard-packed dirt. The next, there was nothing. Marta was on the radio calling it in, requesting more units, more resources. I stood at the spot where the footprints ended, shining my flashlight around, looking for anything that could explain this. There was nothing, just desert and darkness and questions. I walked back to the parking lot alone, leaving the others to continue the search. The rest-stop building loomed against the stars, and I walked up to it, stood where the woman had stood, touched the wall where she'd touched it. The concrete was cold under my palm, rough with age and weathering. I moved my hand across the surface, feeling for anything unusual, and my fingers found the graffiti, those repeated words scratched into the paint. "Come back, come back, come back." I pulled out my phone, turned on its flashlight function, and examined the writing more closely. In the harsh LED light, I could see that the words weren't just written on the wall. They were scratched into it, deep gouges in the concrete, like someone had used their fingernails to carve them. And at the bottom of the column of words, so faint I'd missed it during our first search, was something else. A handprint. I took photos, lots of them, from every angle. The handprint was small, like a woman's or a child's, and it was pressed so hard into the concrete that it had left an indentation. I put my own hand next to it for scale, and that's when I felt it. The concrete under the handprint was warm. I jerked my hand back, my heart hammering. The night air was cold, maybe 50 degrees, and concrete doesn't hold heat. It shouldn't be warm, it definitely shouldn't be warm hours after sunset. I pressed my palm against the wall a few feet away from the handprint. Cold, as expected. Then back to the handprint. Warm, almost hot, like there was something underneath the concrete radiating heat. "Reeves!" Marta's voice, calling from somewhere behind the building. "You need to see this!" I found her around the back of the building, in an area we hadn't fully searched before because it was just a service area, concrete pad with some old dumpsters and electrical boxes. She was standing near one of the electrical boxes, the metal cover hanging open. "Look at this," she said, shining her flashlight inside. The box should have been dead, no power to this building in years. But the meters inside were active, needles moving slightly, showing current flowing through lines that shouldn't have any current in them. "That's not possible," I said. "Nothing about this is possible," Marta replied, "but it's happening anyway." We went back to the parking lot where Morrison and the other deputies were still searching, still hoping to find some trace of the missing woman. I knew they wouldn't. Whatever was taking these people, it wasn't leaving evidence behind. At least, not evidence we knew how to read. At 2:47 a.m., my phone rang. It was our technical analyst, a woman named Chen who worked out of the El Paso office. She sounded excited, almost manic. Agent Halden, I've been analyzing the camera footage from last night, the file with the interference, she said. I found something in the audio. What audio? The highway cameras don't record sound. I know, but there's audio anyway. It's encoded in the interference pattern like a carrier wave. I had to run it through some filters to isolate it, but it's definitely there. What does it say? There was a pause, and I heard her take a breath. It's the same word, repeated over and over, back. Like someone saying come back or go back, but only the second word is clear. The rest is too degraded to make out. And Agent Halden? The voice doesn't sound human. The pitch is wrong, the resonance. It's like someone or something trying to imitate human speech without understanding how it works. I thanked her, hung up, and stood there in the parking lot trying to process what I was hearing, what I was seeing, what I was feeling. 4 people were missing. We had footage showing impossible things, interference patterns that carried in human voices, timestamps that repeated themselves, shapes that defied explanation. And we had nothing that would help us find those 4 people or prevent others from disappearing. We need to close this rest stop, Marta said. Put up barriers, divert traffic, whatever it takes to keep people away. On what grounds? Disappearances at a public location. The highway department will fight us, say we're overreacting. Then we go over their heads, talk to the state, the governor if we have to. This place is dangerous. She was right, of course. But I also knew how the bureaucracy worked. It would take days, maybe weeks, to get approval for something like that. And in the meantime, people would keep using this highway, keep seeing this rest stop, keep pulling over, keep disappearing. The sun came up, and with it came more units, more resources. The state police sent a helicopter, which spent 3 hours flying search patterns over the desert. They found nothing. The county brought in a mobile command center, set it up in the parking lot, and suddenly the abandoned rest stop was full of people and activity. But for all the manpower, for all the technology, we were no closer to understanding what was happening here. At noon, Rourke called. "I'm pulling you out," he said. "Both of you. You've been on this for 4 days straight and you're running on fumes. The state police are taking over the search operation." "We can't just leave," I protested. "We're the only ones who have seen what's really happening here." "That's exactly why you're leaving," Rourke said. "You're too close to this, Reeves. You're starting to see things that might not be there, connecting dots that don't connect. You need rest, perspective, and distance. With all due respect, sir, that's bullshit. Something is happening at this rest stop, something we don't understand, and walking away isn't going to—" "You're not walking away. You're regrouping. Take 48 hours, write up your reports, get some sleep, then we'll reassess." I wanted to argue more, but I knew it wouldn't matter. When Rourke made a decision, it was final. Marta and I packed up our equipment, briefed the state police commander on what we'd observed, and drove back to El Paso. But I couldn't let it go. That night, lying in my own bed for the first time in 4 days, I kept thinking about the handprint on the wall, warm against the cold concrete. Kept hearing that voice in the radio interference saying "back" over and over. Kept seeing that shadow moving beside the woman, that impossible shape that Marta couldn't see. At 3:16 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to my office, pulled up all the files on the case, all the photos and footage and reports. I went through everything again, looking for something I'd missed, some detail that would make sense of this. And that's when I found it. In the maintenance logbook from the rest stop, the one I'd taken from the building, the last entry, dated August 23, 2018. I'd read it before, hadn't thought much of it. But now, looking at it again with everything I'd seen, it hit me differently. Checked all systems. Lights in parking lot flickering again, Sector 3. Radio interference on emergency band. Probably atmospheric. Something wrong with the air tonight. something wrong with the air. I pulled up the closure records for the rest stop, the official documents from the highway department. The rest stop closed on August 27, 2018, 4 days after that last log entry. I kept digging, found news archives from that time period, and there it was, a small article in the Pecos Enterprise, dated August 25, 2018. Highway maintenance worker missing, James Corrigan, 52, an employee of the Texas Department of Transportation, was reported missing on August 24th after failing to return from a routine inspection of rest stop facilities on Highway 285. His vehicle was found at the rest stop south of Pecos, but there was no sign of Corrigan. Sheriff's Department is investigating. I searched for follow-up articles, found nothing. The case had just disappeared, like James Corrigan himself. He wasn't the first. He was victim zero, and we'd all been so focused on the recent disappearances that nobody had connected them to a maintenance worker who'd vanished the week the rest stop closed. I called Marta, woke her up, told her what I'd found. She was silent for a long time. "So what are you saying?" she asked finally. "That whatever's happening there started 5 years ago?" "I'm saying it might be older than that. The log mentions the lights flickering again, like it was a recurring problem, and the radio interference was happening back then too. We need to pull maintenance records, talk to people who worked there, find out how long this has been going on." "Yeah," I said, "we do." But even as I said it, I knew it wouldn't matter. We could trace the history back as far as we wanted, could document every strange occurrence and every disappearance. But it wouldn't tell us what was actually happening. Wouldn't give us a way to stop it. Because some things, I was starting to realize, couldn't be stopped. They could only be avoided. Despite Rourke's orders, I went back to the rest stop the next night. Alone this time. Marta tried to talk me out of it, said I was being reckless, said if something happened to me there'd be nobody to witness it. But I had to see for myself, had to try to understand. I parked my vehicle a quarter-mile away, walked to the rest stop in darkness. It was close to midnight when I arrived, the sky clear and cold, stars so bright they cast shadows. The place was empty, the state police having concluded their search and moved on to other cases. The parking lot was silent except for the wind, which made a lonely whistling sound through the gaps in the boarded windows. I stood in the middle of the lot, exactly where I'd seen the woman disappear. The asphalt was cracked here, and something about the cracks caught my attention. They formed a pattern, radiating out from a central point like a spider web or ripples on water. I knelt down, ran my fingers along the cracks, feeling the rough edges. The concrete was warm. I pulled out my thermal imaging camera, one I'd borrowed from the equipment locker without signing it out. Through the viewfinder, I could see what my hands were feeling. There was a heat signature in the parking lot, a spot maybe 10 feet across that was warmer than the surrounding area. And it was pulsing, the temperature rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. I took readings, documented everything. The temperature differential was small, maybe 5 or 6 degrees, but it was definitely there. And it was centered on the exact spot where the footprints had ended. At 12:47 a.m., the radio in my vehicle started crackling with interference. I could hear it from where I was standing, that same pulsing static I'd heard before. I walked back to the vehicle, picked up the handset, listened. The voice was clearer now, maybe because I was alone, maybe because I was listening for it. It was saying "back" over and over, but I could hear other sounds underneath it now. Breathing, maybe. Or wind. Or something that wasn't quite either. I grabbed my flashlight, walked towards the building. The front door was still chained shut, but I didn't want to go inside anyway. I went around to the side where the handprint was, where the wall was warm. In the beam of my flashlight, the graffiti seemed deeper, more pronounced than it had been. "Come back, come back, come back." and the handprint, that small, pressed shape in the concrete, was glowing faintly. Not bright, not obvious, but definitely luminescent. A pale green glow like old watch dials. I reached out to touch it, then stopped myself. Some instinct, some survival mechanism screaming at me not to make contact. Instead, I took more photos, more readings, trying to document something that couldn't be documented. That's when I heard the sound behind me. Footsteps, slow, measured, coming from the parking lot. I spun around, my hand going to my service weapon, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. There was someone standing by my vehicle. A man, I thought, tall and thin, dressed in what looked like a highway department uniform. He wasn't moving, just standing there facing me. "James Corrigan," I called out. "Is that you?" The figure didn't respond, didn't move. And in the beam of my flashlight I could see that something was wrong with it. The proportions were off, arms too long, legs bending at odd angles. And when I moved the light up to where its face should be, there was nothing. Just a smooth, featureless surface, like looking at a mannequin. I took a step back, my shoulder blades hitting the warm concrete of the building. The figure tilted its head, a movement that was too quick, too fluid. Then it raised one arm, pointing at me. The voice came from everywhere at once, not from the figure but from the air itself, from the building, from the ground beneath my feet. "Come back." Not a request, a command. Or maybe a warning. I ran. Not proud of it, but I ran. Back to my vehicle. Engine starting on the first try by some miracle. I didn't look back until I was on the highway a mile away, and when I did look in the rearview mirror, I could see the rest stop receding in the darkness. And standing in the middle of the parking lot, illuminated by my taillights, was that figure. Still watching. Still pointing. I drove straight to El Paso. Didn't stop. Didn't slow down. By the time I got to the office, the sun was coming up and my hands had finally stopped shaking. I wrote my report that day. All of it, everything I'd seen and heard and felt. I knew how it would sound, knew that without Marta to corroborate it, I'd be facing a psych eval and probably suspension. But I wrote it anyway, because it was the truth. Rourke read it in silence, his face giving nothing away. When he finished, he set the papers down and looked at me across his desk. "You went back there alone," he said. "Against direct orders." "Yes, sir." "And you expect me to believe this? Glowing handprints and figures with no faces? I expect you to read the evidence. The thermal readings, the photos, the audio from the radio interference. It's all documented." Rourke was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I didn't expect. "You're not the first agent to see something out there." I stared at him. "What?" "That case I mentioned, the one in Montana. The agent who worked it, she saw things too. Impossible things. She wrote a report just like this one, full of details that couldn't be explained, evidence that couldn't be reconciled with reality. We buried it, called it stress, fatigue, suggested she'd take some time off. Did she take time off? She retired a month later, moved to Florida, never worked another case. And you know what? The disappearances at that rest stop stopped. Not immediately, but over time. It's been 15 years now, and nobody's vanished from that location since. You're saying I should walk away. I'm saying some cases don't get solved, Reeves. Some things we're just not equipped to understand, and sometimes the best thing we can do is accept that and move on. But I couldn't move on. Over the next 2 weeks, I kept working the case on my own time, kept digging into the history of that rest stop. I found more disappearances going back decades. A waitress in 1987, a geology student in 1972, a family in 1961, all from that same location, all unexplained. And I found something else. Newspaper archives from 1953, when the rest stop was being built. A construction worker had disappeared during the night shift, vanished from the work site without a trace. The project was delayed for weeks while investigators searched the area, but they never found him. The rest stop was built on top of whatever had taken that worker, and for 70 years it had been taking people, one at a time, at irregular intervals. Why? I had no answer. What? Same. All I knew was that it was still there, still active, still waiting. 3 weeks after my solo visit, the highway department put up new signs on Highway 285. Rest stop closed. Next services 45 miles. They added concrete barriers across the entrance, made it impossible for vehicles to pull in. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I stayed with the Bureau for another year, working other cases, never mentioning the rest stop unless someone asked directly. Marta, transferred to the Houston office, said she needed a change of scenery. We still talk sometimes, but we never discuss what we saw out there. The official case file lists 4 people missing, presumed dead, cause unknown. The investigation is classified as open but inactive. That's FBI speak for "we gave up." But I didn't give up. I still drive out there sometimes when I have a night off and can't sleep. I park on the access road, watch the rest stop from a distance. I never get out of the vehicle, never get close, but I watch, and I wait, and I think about those 4 people who stopped at the wrong place at the wrong time. Sometimes, on clear nights when the stars are bright, I see movement in that parking lot, shadows that move wrong, shapes that don't belong. And sometimes, very faintly, I hear that voice on my radio saying the same thing it's always said. Come back. I never will, but I know others will. Despite the barriers, despite the signs, someone will find a way in. Someone always does. And when they do, when they stand in that parking lot and feel that pull, that wrongness in the air, it'll be too late. Because whatever's out there, whatever's been taking people from that spot for 70 years, it's patient, it can wait, it has all the time in the world, and it's still hungry. Last week, I submitted my retirement papers. 21 years with the FBI, and I'm walking away. Not because I'm tired, not because I'm burned out. Because I understand now what Rourke was trying to tell me. Some things can't be fought. They can only be survived. The rest stop is still there, still waiting. The barriers are still up, but I know they won't last. Eventually, someone will move them, thinking they're doing a public service, giving travelers a place to stop. Or the highway department will run out of funding, will remove the obstacles to save money, and then it'll start again. I think about those 4 people a lot. Marcus Webb and his job interview. The woman in the pickup truck whose name we never learned because her truck had stolen plates, probably running from something in her past. And the 2 before them, Vernon Pike and Sandra Meeks, just trying to get home. Did they know in those final moments? Did they understand what was happening to them? Or did they just feel confused, disoriented, wondering why they couldn't move, why the ground felt wrong under their feet, why the air tasted like copper and static? I hope it was quick. I hope they didn't suffer. But late at night, when I can't sleep, I remember that voice in the interference. And I think about what it was saying. Not come back like we thought. Came back. Past tense. Like whatever's out there, it's not calling to people. It's announcing its return. It came back from wherever it had been. And now it's reclaiming something that was taken from it a long time ago. I don't know what that means. I don't want to know. My last day with the Bureau is next Friday. Marta's throwing me a retirement party at a bar in Houston, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to drink too much and tell old war stories and not think about the rest stop. But before I leave, I'm filing one more report. This one, not official, not going into any case file. Just my account, my testimony, for whoever might need it someday. If you're reading this, if you're an agent who's been assigned to investigate disappearances on Highway 285 south of Pecos, listen to me. Don't go there alone. Don't go there at night. And if you do go, if you absolutely have to, and you feel that warmth in the concrete, hear that voice in the static, see those shadows that move wrong, run. Don't try to understand it. Don't try to document it. Don't try to save anyone. Just run and don't look back. Because if you do look back, you might see what I saw. And once you've seen it, once you know it's real, you'll never be able to forget it. It'll follow you home, haunt your dreams, make you question everything you thought you knew about the world. The rest stop is still there. The thing in the rest stop is still there, and it's still waiting. Not for me, not anymore. I've learned my lesson, paid my price in sleepless nights and questions that have no answers. But it's waiting for someone. It always is. Don't let it be you. Houston in August is its own kind of hell. The heat doesn't just sit on you, it crawls inside your clothes, fills your lungs, makes every breath feel like you're drowning in warm water. I've worked out of the Houston field office for 12 years now, and I still haven't gotten used to it. My name is Caleb Moreau, Special Agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and this is my account of what happened in the Montrose District during 3 nights in August 2023. The case came to us on a Tuesday morning, routing through the usual channels. 3 separate incidents, 3 different residences, all within a 6-block radius. The Houston Police Department had worked them individually at first, treating each as a standard breaking and entering. But when the crime analysts noticed the pattern, they kicked it up to us. I remember sitting in the conference room with Sierra Winford, our crime analyst, looking at the map she'd put together. 3 red dots in a tight cluster, all high-end apartments and converted warehouses, the kind of places that went for $3,000 a month and came with exposed brick and original hardwood floors. Young professionals lived there, tech workers and lawyers and medical residents, people with money and busy schedules who didn't have time to notice what was happening in their building until it was too late. "Talk me through it," I said, drinking coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. It was 7 in the morning, and I'd been up since 4, couldn't sleep, kept thinking about the preliminary reports I'd read the night before. Sierra was young, maybe 27, with the kind of sharp intelligence that made her better at this job than people twice her age. She'd come to the Bureau straight out of MIT, turned down offers from every tech company in Silicon Valley because she wanted to do something that mattered. I respected that. "First incident, August 9th, she said, pulling up photos on the screen. Apartment 4B in the Ashland Lofts. Resident is a woman named Michelle Voss, 32, works as a pharmaceutical rep. She comes home around 9 p.m., everything normal, goes to bed around 11. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the power in her apartment cuts out." "Just her apartment?" I asked. "Just hers. Buildings on a shared electrical system, nobody else lost power. When the lights came back on at 2:34 a.m., she found her front door standing open and her security camera system completely dead. Forced entry? No sign of it. Door wasn't damaged, locks weren't picked. It was just open. I looked at the photos. The apartment was expensive, minimalist, the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Everything was neat, ordered, nothing disturbed. Except for the open door and the dead security system. What did she report missing?" "That's the thing," Sierra said. "Nothing. She did a full inventory with HPD and everything was accounted for. Jewelry, electronics, cash, all there. Whoever came in didn't take anything. So, what did they want? That's what we need to find out. The second incident happened 3 nights later, August 12th. Different building, the Morrison Heights complex, apartment 7F. Resident was a man named David Park, 29, software engineer working for one of the oil and gas companies downtown. Same pattern. Power cut at 2:17 a.m., came back at 2:34 a.m. Front door found standing open. Security cameras dead. Nothing stolen. Nothing disturbed. Just that open door, like an invitation or a warning. The third incident was the one that got the Bureau involved. August 15th, the Meridian Towers, apartment 12C. Resident was Elena Vasquez, 41, emergency room physician at Memorial Hermann. She was working a night shift when it happened. Came home at 7 in the morning to find her door open and her cameras dead. But this time, there was something different. Elena's boyfriend had been sleeping in the apartment, a guy named Marcus who worked construction. When HPD interviewed him, he said he'd woken up around 2:30 to find the power out and the bedroom door open. He'd gotten up to check the circuit breaker, and that's when he'd seen something in the hallway. A person, the officer had asked. I don't know, Marcus said. It was too dark, but there was something there. I could feel it, like someone was watching me. By the time he found his phone and turned on the flashlight, whatever had been there was gone. The front door was open, the hallway empty. Power came back on a few minutes later, and he called the police. HPD processed all 3 scenes, found nothing. No fingerprints, no DNA, no trace evidence. Whoever was getting into these apartments, they weren't leaving anything behind except questions. Could be someone in the buildings, I said, studying the map. Maintenance worker, someone with access to the electrical systems and master keys. HPD thought of that, Sierra said. They interviewed everyone with building access at all 3 locations. Maintenance staff, property managers, cleaning crews. All of them have alibis for at least one of the incidents. What about the security footage from the buildings themselves? Lobbies, elevators, parking garages. That's where it gets interesting. Sierra pulled up more files, video stills showing timestamps. All 3 buildings have comprehensive security systems, cameras covering every entrance and common area. During the exact 17 minutes when the apartments lost power, the building cameras show nothing unusual. No unauthorized entry, no suspicious persons, nobody using the elevators or stairwells who shouldn't be there. So whoever's doing this, they're either invisible or they're already in the building before the incidents occur. Or they're getting in through the apartments themselves, Sierra said. But that doesn't make sense either, because all 3 units are on high floors. Ashland Lofts is 4th floor, Morrison Heights is 7th, Meridian Towers is 12th. No balconies, windows are all locked from the inside, no access from the roof. I sat back, thinking. 3 incidents, same time frame, same duration, same result. The 17-minute window was too precise to be coincidence. That level of timing suggested planning, rehearsal. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing and how long it would take. The cameras in the apartments, I said. Were they networked or local storage? Mix of both. Voss and Vasquez had cloud-connected systems. Park had local storage on a hard drive. All 3 were completely wiped. Not just turned off, wiped. Like someone went in and deliberately erased every second of footage. Can we recover any of it? Sierra shook her head. I've got our tech team looking at the drives, but whoever did this knew what they were doing. The data isn't just deleted, it's been overwritten multiple times. Professional-grade data destruction. That bothered me more than anything else. Breaking into apartments was one thing. Even doing it without leaving evidence showed skill. But the level of technical sophistication required to wipe security footage that thoroughly, that suggested something more than a regular burglary crew. "We need to talk to the victims," I said. "Face to face, not just read the HPD reports. I want to hear their stories in their own words." We started with Michelle Voss. She lived in the Ashland Lofts, and when we met her in the lobby of her building, I could see she was scared. She was dressed for work in a business suit, heels clicking on the polished concrete floor, but her eyes had dark circles under them and her hands kept moving, touching her phone, adjusting her bag, never quite still. "I haven't been sleeping well," she said when I asked how she was doing. "Every night I lie there waiting for the lights to go out, and I can't stop thinking about what might have been in my apartment while I was asleep." We sat in a coffee shop across the street, and she told us about that night. She'd gone to bed around 11, read for a while on her phone, fell asleep before midnight. She woke up when the power cut, that sudden darkness that makes you disoriented, not sure if your eyes are open or closed. "I thought it was just a blown fuse," she said. "I got up to check the breaker, and that's when I realized how quiet it was. You don't notice it usually, but there's always noise in an apartment. The AC, the refrigerator, electronics humming. When the power's out, it's completely silent." "Did you hear anything else?" Sierra asked. "Footsteps, voices, anything unusual?" Michelle shook her head. "Nothing, just silence. I used my phone as a flashlight, checked the breaker box. All the switches were in the right position. Nothing tripped. I was standing there trying to figure out what to do when the power just came back on, like someone flipped a switch." "And that's when you saw the door?" "Yeah. I walked back into the living room and the front door was standing wide open. I know I locked it before bed, I always do, but there it was, just open, and I could see out into the hallway." "Did you go look?" "No, God no. I slammed it shut, locked it, and called 911. Then I sat in my bedroom with a knife until the police got there." I could see her hand shaking as she spoke, and I felt that familiar anger that comes with this job. Someone had violated her space, her safety, and we didn't even know why. David Park's story was similar. He lived alone, worked long hours, came home exhausted every night. The power cut woke him up, and he'd done the same thing as Michelle, gotten up to check the breaker. But in his case, he'd noticed something else. "The air felt different," he said. "We were in his apartment this time, him sitting on a leather couch that probably cost more than my car. I know that sounds crazy, but it did. Like the temperature had dropped or the humidity changed. It felt wrong." "Did you see anyone?" I asked. "No, but I heard something. After the power came back on, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Slow, measured, like someone was walking very deliberately. I looked through the peephole, but the hallway was empty." Elena Vasquez was the hardest interview. She was a doctor, trained to deal with emergencies and trauma, but this had shaken her badly. Her boyfriend Marcus was there when we talked to her, sitting close, protective. "I keep thinking about what could have happened," she said. "Marcus was asleep in there, completely vulnerable, and someone was in my apartment. If they'd wanted to hurt him, there was nothing he could have done." Marcus nodded. "I saw it," he said. "Or I saw something. When I went into the hallway, there was a shape near the door. I couldn't make out details. It was too dark, but it was tall. Taller than me, and I'm 6'2". "How tall?" I asked. He thought about it. 7 feet, maybe? I don't know. It's hard to judge in the dark. But it didn't move like a person. It was too still, too quiet. And then the lights came on, and it was gone. After the interviews, Sierra and I sat in my bureau vehicle outside the Meridian Towers, watching people come and go from the building. Young professionals carrying briefcases and gym bags, living their lives with no idea that something had been hunting in their hallways. "What do you think?" Sierra asked. "I think someone's casing these apartments for a reason," I said. "They're not stealing anything, which means either they're looking for something specific that they haven't found yet, or the break-ins themselves are the point. Like a dominance thing? Proving they can get in anywhere? Maybe. Or maybe they're practicing, building up to something bigger." My phone rang, and I saw it was Deputy Arlen Trammell from the Harris County Sheriff's Office. He'd been the one who first noticed the pattern, called it in to us. Good cop, sharp eye for detail. "Moreau," I answered. "We got another one," Trammell said. "Same pattern, same neighborhood. Power cut at 2:17, door found open at 2:34. But this time, the victim's home security recorded something before the system went down." My heart rate picked up. We're on our way. The fourth incident was at the Westheimer Lofts, apartment 9A, resident named Thomas Brennan, 35, worked in finance. He wasn't home when it happened, had been at a business dinner that ran late, but his security system had been active and recording. Trammell met us in the lobby, a big guy with a shaved head and the kind of calm competence that comes from 20 years on the job. He handed me a tablet showing the security footage. "Watch from the 2:15 mark," he said. The footage showed Brennan's living room, shot from a camera mounted near the ceiling. The apartment was dark, empty, nothing moving. The timestamp showed 2:15:47. Everything normal. At 2:16:03, the lights in the apartment flickered. Just once, barely noticeable. At 2:16:28, they flickered again. Longer this time, maybe half a second. At 2:17 o'clock exactly, the power cut. The screen went black, complete darkness. But the camera was still recording, using its infrared night vision mode. I could see the living room in that weird green-gray tint, empty furniture, shadows in the corners. At 2:17:45, there was a flash of white light. Brief, maybe a quarter second. The screen whited out completely, then returned to the infrared view. "Keep watching," Trammell said. Another flash at 2:18:12, brighter this time, lasting longer. When the infrared view came back, I saw something that made my skin crawl. There was a silhouette in the center of the room. Tall, thin, standing perfectly still. The infrared camera couldn't pick up details, just a dark shape against the lighter background. But the proportions were wrong. The arms were too long, hanging down past where the knees should be. The head was elongated, oval-shaped, tilted at an angle that made my neck hurt just looking at it. "Jesus," Sierra whispered beside me. Another flash at 2:19:33. When the view returned, the silhouette had moved. It was closer to the camera now, maybe 10 feet away. Still perfectly motionless, but in a different position, like it had teleported rather than walked. Flash at 2:21:04. Closer still. I could see the outline of the head now, featureless, no visible eyes or mouth. Just a smooth, oval surface. Flash at 2:22:47. The silhouette was directly in front of the camera, filling the frame. I had a clear view of the torso, and I realized what was wrong with the proportions. The rib cage was too long, extending down farther than it should, and I could see what looked like additional joints in the arms, segments that bent in places human arms don't bend. Flash at 2:24:15. The screen went completely white, stayed white for almost 3 seconds. When the infrared view came back, the silhouette was gone. The room was empty again. The footage continued for another 10 minutes, showing nothing. Then, at 2:34, the power came back on. The lights in the apartment flickered to life. The camera switched from infrared to normal mode, and everything looked completely ordinary. Except the front door was standing wide open. I watched the footage 3 more times, trying to find some explanation. Camera malfunction, lens flare, some kind of interference. But the image was too consistent, too clear. Whatever that silhouette was, it had been there in the apartment, moving through the space while the power was out. "Have you shown this to Brennan?" I asked Trammell. "Yeah, he watched it once, then asked us to delete it from his system. Said he didn't want to know what had been in his apartment." "Did you?" "Delete it? Hell no. I made 3 copies and encrypted them all. But I don't blame him for not wanting to look at it again." Sierra and I went up to the 9th floor, knocked on Brennan's door. He answered quickly, like he'd been waiting by the door. He was younger than I expected, maybe 35, but looking older, with the kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than lack of sleep. "Mr. Brennan, I'm Special Agent Moreau. This is Crime Analyst Winford. We'd like to ask you a few questions about what happened last night." He let us in, but I could tell he didn't want to. The apartment was nice, modern furniture and abstract art on the walls, but it felt cold, unlived in, like he'd already decided to leave and was just waiting for his lease to end. "I didn't see anything," he said before we even sat down. "I wasn't here. I was at dinner with clients until almost midnight, and when I got home the door was open and the security company was already calling me." "We've seen the footage," I said carefully, "from your interior camera." His face went pale. "I don't want to talk about that. Mr. Brennan, we're trying to establish a pattern, understand who's targeting these apartments and why. Anything you can tell us might help prevent this from happening to someone else." He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. Then he said, "I've lived in Houston my whole life. Born at Memorial Hermann, grew up in the Heights, went to Rice. This is my city, you know. I should feel safe here. But after watching that footage, I don't think I'll ever feel safe anywhere again." "The shape in the recording," Sierra said gently. "Did it look familiar to you? Have you seen anything like it before?" "No, and I hope I never see it again. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't human. The way it moved, the way it just appeared in different spots, the proportions. That wasn't a person in a costume or someone playing a prank. That was something else. Do you have any enemies?" I asked. "Anyone who might want to scare you or send you a message?" He shook his head. "I work in finance. I analyze market trends and write reports. I don't make enemies. I make PowerPoint presentations." We asked a few more questions, got nothing useful, and left. In the elevator going down, Sierra looked at me. "You believe him? That it wasn't human?" "I believe something was in that apartment," I said. "Whether it was human or not, I don't know. But those proportions, the way it moved, that's not normal." "Could be special effects," Sierra said, but she didn't sound convinced. "Someone hacking the camera feed, inserting computer-generated images. Why? What's the point? They're not demanding money, not making threats, not even stealing anything. If this is some elaborate prank, it's the most pointless prank in history." We spent the rest of the day reviewing the footage, sending copies to our technical team, consulting with experts in video forensics and computer imaging. Everyone agreed that the footage didn't show signs of obvious manipulation, but nobody could explain what we were actually seeing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that silhouette, the way it had moved from position to position without seeming to walk, the wrong proportions, the featureless head, the 2 long arms. I'd worked a lot of cases in my 12 years with the Bureau, seen crime scene photos that gave me nightmares, interviewed people who'd done things I couldn't imagine, but I'd never seen anything that bothered me quite like this. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and went to my office. Sierra was already there, sitting at her desk, surrounded by printouts and tablet screens, energy drink cans piled in the trash. "Couldn't sleep either?" I asked. "I keep running the pattern," she said. 4 incidents, 4 different buildings, all within the same 6-block radius. Same time frame, same duration, same result. Doors open, cameras wiped, nothing stolen. But what's the common factor? What connects these specific apartments? The residents? Already checked. They don't know each other, don't work for the same companies, don't shop at the same stores or go to the same gyms. The only thing they have in common is that they all live in high-end apartments in Montrose. What about the buildings themselves? Same developer, same management company. All different. Ashland Lofts was built in 2015, Morrison Heights in 2018, Meridian Towers in 2012, Westheimer Lofts in 20. 4 different developers, 4 different management companies. I looked at her map, at those 4 red dots clustered together. There had to be something, some connection we were missing. "What about the geography?" I said. "Is there anything significant about that specific area? Underground tunnels, old infrastructure, anything?" Sierra pulled up a geological survey map, overlaid it with the locations. "The whole area is built on old industrial land. Before it got gentrified, this was all warehouses and manufacturing facilities. Most of the buildings are conversions. They kept the original structure and retrofitted them into apartments. So they all have old electrical systems, old infrastructure. Yeah, but they've all been updated to code. New wiring, new breakers, everything modernized." I stared at the map, and then I saw it. The 4 red dots, when connected, formed a rough diamond shape. And right in the center of that diamond, there was a gray square on the map marking an old building. "What's that?" I asked, pointing. Sierra zoomed in. "Old Houston Light and Power Substation. Decommissioned in 1987, building's been vacant ever since. There's been talk of converting it into apartments like everything else, but it's got environmental issues from the old equipment. Makes it expensive to renovate." "How far is it from the 4 incident locations?" She measured, about 3 blocks from each one, right in the center of the cluster. We looked at each other, and I could see she was thinking the same thing I was. It might be nothing, probably was nothing, but it was the first actual connection we'd found between the 4 locations. "We should check it out," I said. "Now? It's 2:30 in the morning. Best time to see it. If someone's using that building as a base of operations, they're probably active at night." Sierra hesitated, then nodded. "Let me get my gear." 20 minutes later, we were parked across the street from the old substation, watching it through the windshield. The building was 3 stories of weathered brick, windows boarded up, chain-link fence surrounding the perimeter. A faded sign near the gate read, "Property of Houston Light and Power, no trespassing." The place looked abandoned, forgotten, the kind of structure that cities have too many of to bother tearing down. But as I watched it, I noticed something odd. The building was dark, no lights visible anywhere. But there was a faint glow coming from somewhere inside, barely visible through gaps in the boarded windows. Not steady light, but flickering, pulsing like a failing fluorescent tube. "You see that?" I asked Sierra. "Yeah, could be squatters, homeless people using the building for shelter." "Could be." We got out of the vehicle, approached the fence. There was a gate, secured with a chain and padlock that looked old and rusty. But when I touched it, the chain was loose. Someone had cut through one of the links, then repositioned it to look intact. "Someone's been here recently," I said quietly. I pulled my service weapon and Sierra did the same. We were both trained for this, had done it hundreds of times, clearing buildings and securing scenes. But I felt more nervous than usual. something about this place setting off alarms in the back of my mind. We pushed through the gate, crossed the overgrown lot to the main building. The door was metal, scarred with age and graffiti, and it was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly, the hinges creaking in the silence. Inside was a hallway, concrete floor and brick walls, lit by that same flickering glow we'd seen from outside. The air smelled like ozone and decay, and I could hear a faint humming sound, like electrical current running through old wiring. We moved down the hallway, weapons raised, checking each room as we passed. Most were empty, just bare concrete and exposed pipes, evidence of the building's industrial past. But as we went deeper into the structure, the humming got louder, and the light got brighter. At the end of the hallway was a metal door, and light was leaking around the edges of it. That same flickering pulse we'd seen before. I put my hand on the door, felt vibration running through the metal, and heard something that made my blood go cold. A voice. Distorted, mechanical, but definitely a voice, saying words I couldn't quite make out. I looked at Sierra, and she nodded. On 3, I pushed the door open and we moved into the room beyond. The room on the other side of that door wasn't what I expected. I'd been ready for anything. A criminal hideout, a homeless encampment, maybe even some kind of drug lab. What I found instead was something that made no sense at all. The space was huge, must have taken up most of the building's first floor. The walls were lined with old electrical equipment, massive circuit breakers and transformer housings, all covered in decades of dust and grime. But in the center of the room, someone had set up what looked like a command center. There were 3 card tables pushed together, covered in laptops and monitors, all running, all powered, despite the building supposedly having no electricity. Cables snaked across the floor, connecting to jury-rigged power sources I didn't recognize. And on every screen I saw the same thing: security camera footage. Live feeds from apartment buildings, showing hallways and lobbies and parking garages. I recognized some of the views from the incident locations. The Ashland Lofts lobby, the Morrison Heights parking garage, the Meridian Towers elevator bank. Someone had hacked into the security systems of every building in the area and was monitoring them in real time. "FBI, show yourself," I called out, sweeping the room with my weapon. Nothing. The room was empty except for the equipment, that constant electrical hum filling the air. But someone had been here recently. There was a coffee cup on one of the tables, still warm when I touched it. An open bag of chips, a phone charger plugged into one of the laptops. Sierra moved to the monitors, started examining them. "This is high-level stuff," she said. "These aren't just simple security hacks. Someone's built a complete surveillance network, tapping into building systems across the whole neighborhood." I checked the rest of the room, found a sleeping bag in one corner, some clothing, personal items. Whoever was using this space was living here, at least part-time. But there was no indication of who they were or why they were doing this. Then I noticed something else. On the wall behind the monitors, someone had taped up photographs. Dozens of them, printed on regular paper, showing people going about their daily lives. Some were security camera stills. Others looked like long-range surveillance photos taken with a telephoto lens. I recognized some of the faces. Michelle Voss, walking into her building carrying groceries. David Park, getting out of his car in the parking garage. Elena Vasquez in her scrubs, heading to work. Thomas Brennan at a coffee shop, laptop open in front of him. And there were others, people I didn't recognize, at least 20 more faces, all residents of buildings in this neighborhood. "He's targeting them," Sierra said quietly, looking at the photos. Or she. Whoever's doing this, they've been watching these people, learning their patterns. But why? What's the endgame? Before she could answer, my phone buzzed with an alert. It was an automated notification from our monitoring system. flagged for high priority. I pulled it up, and my stomach dropped. There was another incident happening right now. The alert showed a power outage at the Sawyer building, apartment 15J, starting at 2:17 a.m. I checked my watch. It was 2:19. We'd been so focused on the substation we'd missed the beginning of another incident. "We need to go," I said. "Now." We ran back to the vehicle, and I drove faster than I should have through the empty streets, Sierra on the radio coordinating with HPD. The Sawyer building was only 4 blocks away, and we made it in under 3 minutes. The lobby was lit up, normal power, and the night security guard looked confused when we showed him our credentials and demanded access to the 15th floor. "I haven't seen anything unusual," he said, checking his monitors. "All the building systems are functioning normally. What about apartment 15J? He pulled up the logs. Power's fine there, too. No outages reported. But our monitoring system said otherwise. I pulled up the feed on my phone, showed it to him. It clearly showed apartment 15J listed as having lost power at 2:17 a.m. "That's not possible," the guard said. "I'm looking right at the same system, and it shows everything normal. Can you call the resident, verify they're okay?" He tried, but there was no answer. He tried 3 times, the phone ringing through to voicemail. The guard was starting to look worried now, and he used his master key to unlock the elevator to the 15th floor. We rode up in silence, Sierra checking her weapon, me thinking about that silhouette in the camera footage, those wrong proportions, and 2 long arms. When we reached the 15th floor, the hallway lights were on, everything looking normal and quiet. Apartment 15J was at the end of the hall. The door was closed, no sign of forced entry. I knocked, loud and official. "FBI, open up!" No response. I knocked again, identified myself, still nothing. The security guard used his master key, and I pushed the door open carefully, weapon raised. The apartment was dark and silent. I found the light switch, flipped it on, and the overhead lights came on immediately. No power outage. At least not anymore. "FBI, is anyone home?" We cleared the apartment room by room, standard procedure, checking closets and bathrooms. The place was empty, neat and tidy, everything in its place, but no one home. I checked the bedroom, found the bed made, no sign anyone had been sleeping in it. In the living room, I saw a security camera mounted in the corner, same brand as the others. I called to Sierra, and she came over with her tablet, accessed the camera's cloud storage. The footage showed the apartment empty all evening. No one had come home. But at 2:17 a.m., the timestamp on the recording, the lights had flickered, just like in Thomas Brennan's apartment. And then, at 2:17:45, the first flash of white light. "Here we go again," Sierra said quietly. We watched the footage, that same sequence we'd seen before. White flashes at irregular intervals, the camera switching to infrared night vision, and then, between the flashes, the silhouette. But this time, there was something different. The silhouette was clearer, more defined. I could see details I'd missed in the other footage. The head wasn't just oval-shaped, it had a texture to it, like overlapping scales or plates. The arms weren't just too long. They had those extra joints I'd noticed before, segments that bent in ways that made me feel sick to look at. And the worst part, the detail that made my hands shake as I held the tablet, was visible in one frame where the silhouette was closest to the camera. It had eyes. Not human eyes, but something like them. Dark ovals set in that strange head, reflecting the infrared light like an animal's eyes caught in headlights. And those eyes were looking directly at the camera, looking at us. The footage continued, showing the silhouette moving through the apartment, those impossible movements from position to position. And then, At 2:33:54, just seconds before the power was supposed to come back on, something happened that wasn't in the other recordings. The silhouette turned towards the front door and raised one of those two long arms, pointing. Then the final flash of the white light, and when the view cleared, the apartment was empty again. At 2:34 the power came back on. At 2:34:17, the front door opened. Not swinging open like in the other incidents, but opening slowly, deliberately. And I could see on the footage that the deadbolt was still engaged, the chain lock still fastened. The door opened anyway, metal screeching as the locks tore free from their mounting points. The door stood open for exactly 10 seconds. Then it swung shut, and the locks clicked back into place, undamaged. "That's not possible," the security guard said. He'd been watching over our shoulders, and his face had gone pale. "Those are solid steel locks. You'd need to physically break them to open a door with them engaged." "Do you know who lives here?" I asked. He checked his records. Apartment 15J is leased to a Rebecca Morrison, 28, works for an architecture firm downtown. She's been a resident for about 6 months. "Try calling her again." He did, and this time someone answered. I could hear a woman's voice muffled through the phone's speaker. "Miss Morrison, this is building security. Are you at home?" "No, I'm in Austin for work. I'll be back tomorrow. Why?" The guard looked at me, and I took the phone. "Miss Morrison, this is Special Agent Caleb Moreau with the FBI. We need to ask you some questions about your apartment." There was a long pause. "The FBI? Is something wrong?" "We're investigating a series of incidents in your neighborhood. I need you to tell me, have you noticed anything unusual in your apartment recently? Equipment malfunctioning, doors opening on their own, anything like that?" "No, everything's been fine, but I've only been there a few days this month. I travel a lot for work." "When was the last time you were home?" "Sunday. I left Monday morning for this trip." "That was 3 days ago. If the pattern held, Rebecca Morrison would come home to find her front door locks torn apart and her security footage wiped. But this time, we'd been here when it happened. This time, we had live footage that hadn't been erased." I thanked her, ended the call, and looked at Sierra. "We need to get this footage to the technical team immediately, before someone realizes we have it and tries to wipe it remotely." She was already downloading it to an encrypted drive, making multiple copies. While she worked, I examined the door locks. They looked intact now, but I could see scratches on the metal around the deadbolt. Stress marks where the lock had been forced through the door frame and then somehow reseated. My phone rang, and I saw it was Deputy Trammell. "Moreau, we got a call from one of your monitoring systems. Said there was an incident at the Sawyer building." "Yeah, we're here now. The resident's out of town, but we got footage of what happened." "That's not why I'm calling. We just got another report. Different building, same neighborhood. Resident came home to find his door open and his security system dead. Says he wasn't home when it happened, but his neighbor heard someone walking around in his apartment around 2:30 a.m. I felt cold. "What's the address?" He told me, and I checked it on the map. It was 6 blocks away, outside the original cluster but in the same general area. The pattern was expanding. "Trammell, I need you to pull every missing persons report for this area from the last 6 months. Anyone who disappeared without explanation, especially if they lived in one of these apartment buildings." "You think someone's been taken?" "I don't know what I think yet. But we've got 5 incidents now, 5 different apartments with doors found open and security wiped. What if someone was home during one of those incidents? What if they didn't get away?" After I hung up, Sierra and I stood in Rebecca Morrison's apartment, and I tried to think through what we knew. Someone was monitoring the apartment buildings in this neighborhood, hacking their security systems, and somehow getting into units during 17-minute windows when the power was cut. They weren't stealing anything, at least not that we could confirm, but they were leaving evidence of their presence. Those open doors like calling cards. And the footage we'd seen, that silhouette with its wrong proportions and reflecting eyes, whatever that was, it was real. It had been in these apartments, moving through spaces while people slept or while they were away. But the question that bothered me most, the one I couldn't answer, was why? What was the purpose of all this? What did they want? Moreau, Sierra said, and something in her voice made me turn. She was holding her tablet, showing me something on the screen. I ran a comparison on all 5 incident locations, looking for any possible connection we might have missed. And they're all on the same power grid. Specifically, they all draw from the same main transformer station. Let me guess, the old Houston Light and Power substation. She nodded. The building's been decommissioned, but the underground infrastructure is still active. All the power for this neighborhood still routes through there before being distributed to individual buildings. I understood immediately. Whoever was working out of that substation had direct access to the electrical infrastructure for the entire area. They could cut power to specific apartments, specific units, with precision and timing. And if they were monitoring the security systems, they'd know exactly when residents were home and when they were away. We need to go back there, I said. Now, and this time we're bringing backup. We left the security guard with instructions to lock down Rebecca Morrison's apartment and not let anyone in without FBI authorization. Then we headed back to the substation, this time with 3 HPD units following us. I'd called Trammell, and he was coordinating a proper tactical response. Officers in body armor with flashlights and shotguns. When we got there, the building was dark. The flickering glow we'd seen before was gone, the whole structure looking abandoned and lifeless. We approached cautiously, weapons drawn, and found the front door standing open. The hallway inside was dark now. No lights, no humming electrical sound. I used my flashlight to navigate, and we moved through the building toward the room where we'd found the command center. The door at the end of the hall was closed. I signaled for the HPD officers to stack up behind me, counted down from 3 and pushed it open. The room was empty. Not just empty of people, but empty of everything. The tables were gone, the monitors, the laptops, the cables, all of it. The only evidence anyone had been there was some furniture impressions in the dust on the floor and the photographs still taped to the wall. But those photographs had changed. New ones had been added, and when I looked closer, my blood went cold. There were pictures of me and Sierra, surveillance photos showing us entering the building earlier that night, examining the command center, looking at the monitors. Someone had been watching us while we were in here, had photographed us, and then evacuated everything before we could come back. And below those photos, written in black marker directly on the brick wall, was a message. "You found me. Now I'll find you." The HPD officers searched the entire building, found nothing except evidence of recent habitation. Whoever had been using this place as a base of operations was gone, and they'd taken everything with them. We processed the scene, collected the photographs as evidence, documented everything. But I knew it wouldn't lead anywhere. Whoever was doing this, they were smart, careful, always 3 steps ahead of us. It was almost dawn when we finished, the sun starting to rise over the Houston skyline. Sierra and I stood outside the substation, watching the city wake up, and I felt that deep exhaustion that comes from working all night on a case that's going nowhere. "What do we do now?" Sierra asked. "We wait," I said. "They're going to hit another apartment, probably tonight. And this time we're going to be ready." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure we could be ready. How do you prepare for something you don't understand? something that moves through locked doors and appears on camera footage in forms that shouldn't exist. My phone buzzed, and I saw a text from Trammell. He'd pulled the missing persons reports I'd requested, and there was something I needed to see. Over the last 6 months, 3 people had been reported missing from apartments in the Montrose area. All 3 lived in buildings within the cluster we'd identified. All 3 disappeared from their apartments with no sign of forced entry, no evidence of foul play. And all 3 had security systems that stopped recording hours before they were reported missing. 3 people, just gone, like they'd ceased to exist. I forwarded the information to Sierra, and she pulled up the details on her tablet. The first missing person was a man named Alex Torres, 26, software engineer. Disappeared from his apartment in the Ashland Lofts 3 months ago. His roommate came home from a business trip to find Alex gone. No note, no explanation, all his belongings still in the apartment. The second was Sarah Kim, 31, graphic designer. Disappeared from the Morrison Heights complex 2 months ago. Her boyfriend reported her missing when she didn't show up for dinner, and her car was still in the building's parking garage. The third was James Wolcott, 42, real estate agent. Disappeared from the Meridian Towers 6 weeks ago. His business partner called the police when James missed several important meetings, and they found his apartment empty, his phone and wallet left behind. 3 people, 3 of the same buildings where we'd documented the break-in incidents. And now that I looked at the dates, I realized something that made my skin crawl. Each disappearance happened on a night when there had been a power outage in the building. Not the apartment, but the whole building. Brief electrical issues that had been attributed to maintenance problems or grid fluctuations. Issues that lasted exactly 17 minutes. They weren't practicing, Sierra said quietly. The break-ins we've been investigating, those are the failures. The times when nobody was home or they left before it was over. But when someone was home, when they were there during the full 17 minutes. She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. 3 people missing. 3 unexplained disappearances from apartments that had lost power for 17 minutes during the night. We'd been looking at this all wrong. This wasn't a burglary ring or a surveillance operation or someone playing elaborate pranks. This was something worse, something that took people. And we had no idea why or how or where they were being taken. I called Rourke, my supervisor at the Bureau, and briefed him on everything we'd found. The command center and the substation, the surveillance photos, the pattern of disappearances. He listened in silence, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "I'm sending you more resources," he finally said. "This is bigger than we thought. We need to establish a task force, bring in specialists, figure out what we're dealing with. With all respect, sir, we don't have time for that. If the pattern holds, there's going to be another incident tonight. And this time, someone might be home. Someone might disappear. What are you suggesting? We set up surveillance on every building in the cluster, monitor the power grid, watch for any fluctuations. The second we see a 17-minute outage starting, we move in. Fast response, full tactical, get there before whoever's doing this can finish whatever they're doing. And if you encounter whoever's behind this?" I thought about that silhouette in the footage, those reflecting eyes and impossible proportions. Then we'll deal with it. We spent the day preparing. HPD coordinated with the power company to give us real-time monitoring of the grid. We stationed unmarked units near every building in the target area, all of them ready to respond within minutes. Tactical teams were briefed, given photos of the missing persons, told to treat this as a potential kidnapping in progress. And Sierra and we went back to our office and watched that footage from Rebecca Morrison's apartment over and over. Studying the silhouette, trying to understand what we were seeing. "What if it's not human?" Sierra said at one point. "What if we're looking at this wrong, assuming it's a person in a costume or using special effects? What are you suggesting?" She hesitated. "I don't know. But those proportions, the way it moves, the fact that it can open doors with the locks engaged, the eyes reflecting infrared light, none of that is human." "The FBI investigates crimes committed by people," I said, "not ghost stories." "I know. But what if this is something we can't explain? What if the evidence is pointing to something that shouldn't exist?" I didn't have an answer for that. In 12 years with the Bureau, I'd learned to trust evidence, to follow facts wherever they led. But the facts in this case were leading somewhere I didn't want to go, somewhere that didn't fit into any framework I'd been trained to use. Night fell, and we took our positions. I was with Trammell in an unmarked car near the center of the cluster. Sierra was coordinating from our mobile command post, and tactical teams were staged and ready. All we could do now was wait. At 2:15 a.m., I was drinking cold coffee and trying to stay alert when Sierra's voice came over the radio. "We've got a fluctuation. Grid Sector 7. Power dropping in the Westheimer lofts." "How many units affected?" I asked. "Just one. Apartment 6C. Power cut at 2:17 exactly." Trammell was already driving. Lights off, moving through the empty streets toward the Westheimer lofts. Other units were converging from different directions. All of us coordinated. All of us moving fast. We reached the building in under 2 minutes. The lobby was lit, normal power, and we didn't wait for the security guard. Trammell and I went straight to the stairs, took them 2 at a time, tactical teams following behind us. The 6th-floor hallway was quiet, lit by emergency lighting that cast long shadows. Apartment 6C was at the end of the hall, and as we approached, I could see the door was closed. I knocked, loud and official. "FBI, open up!" No response. I checked my watch. We'd been in the building for 3 minutes. That left 14 minutes before the power was supposed to come back on, before whoever was in there finished whatever they were doing. "Breach it," I told the tactical team. They used a battering ram, and the door splintered inward. We moved into the apartment fast, weapons raised, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The apartment was small, maybe 500 square feet, and it only took seconds to clear it. Empty, nobody home, but there was something in the air, that same wrong feeling I'd noticed before, like the temperature and pressure had changed. And in the living room, I saw the security camera, its LED showing it was still recording on battery backup. "Sierra, can you access the camera feed from apartment 6C?" I asked over the radio. "Already on it," she said. A pause. "Moreau, you need to see this. It's there right now." My heart was hammering as I looked around the apartment, seeing nothing but shadows and furniture. "Where?" "In the bedroom. It's in the bedroom." I moved to the bedroom door, which was closed. I could hear something on the other side, a sound like breathing but wrong, too deep, too slow. Trammell was beside me, his shotgun raised, and I counted down on my fingers. 3, 2, 1. I kicked the door open and brought my weapon up, flashlight beams stabbing into the darkness. The room was empty. Just a bed, a dresser, a closet, with the door hanging open. But the air in here was colder, much colder than the rest of the apartment, and I could see my breath fogging in the flashlight beam. "There's nothing here," I said into the radio. "It's right in front of you," Sierra said. And I could hear the fear in her voice. "On the camera feed, it's standing right in front of you." I turned slowly, sweeping my light around the room. Nothing. Just empty space and cold air and that sound of wrong breathing. Then I saw it. Not with my eyes, but in the mirror on the dresser. The mirror showed the reflection of the room behind me, and in that reflection there was something that wasn't there when I looked directly. The silhouette, tall and thin and wrong, standing in the center of the room, those two long arms hanging at its sides, that oval head tilted at an impossible angle, and those eyes, dark and reflecting, looking right at me. I spun around, bringing my weapon to bear on where the reflection showed it standing. My flashlight beam passed through empty air, illuminating nothing. But in the mirror, I could still see it, motionless, watching. "Moreau, get out of there," Trammell said. He was backing toward the door, keeping his shotgun raised. "Whatever that thing is, we can't fight it if we can't see it." He was right. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to get out of this apartment and never come back. But I thought about those 3 missing people, about whatever happened to them during their 17 minutes. "Not yet," I said. "We need to see what it does." I watched in the mirror as the silhouette moved, gliding toward me without seeming to walk. Those arms came up, reaching, and I could see details now that I'd missed in the footage. The hands weren't hands at all, but something else. Something that looked more like clusters of thin fingers or tendrils. The thing reached out in the reflection, and I felt something touch my face. Not physical contact, but a sensation like static electricity, making my skin prickle and my hair stand up. And then I heard it. That voice from the radio interference, but clearer now, close enough that it sounded almost human. "Come back." Not a threat or a command, an invitation, or maybe a request. The temperature in the room dropped even further, and I could see frost forming on the mirror's surface, obscuring the reflection. The last thing I saw before the frost covered it completely was those eyes, dark and alien and somehow sad, looking at me with something that might have been longing. Then my watch alarm went off and I realized 17 minutes had passed. The lights in the apartment flickered back on, and the cold air vanished like it had never been there. The breathing sound stopped, and when I looked at the mirror, I saw only my own reflection, pale and shaken. Sierra's voice crackled over the radio. "Moreau, are you okay? The camera feed just went back to normal." "Yeah," I said, but I wasn't sure it was true. "We're okay." We searched the apartment thoroughly, found nothing except that strange frost pattern on the mirror and some temperature readings that didn't make sense. The bedroom had been 20 degrees colder than the rest of the apartment, but there was no explanation for it. No open windows, no AC malfunction, nothing that could account for that kind of temperature drop. The resident of apartment 6C was a woman named Lisa Huang, 29, who worked as a nurse at Methodist Hospital. When we called her, she said she'd been working a double shift and wasn't home. She'd been checking her security camera periodically throughout the night and hadn't seen anything unusual. But when Sierra pulled up the footage from Huang's camera and showed it to our technical team, they confirmed what we'd experienced. For exactly 17 minutes, the camera had recorded something in the apartment that wasn't visible to the naked eye. Something that appeared on infrared and in reflective surfaces but couldn't be seen directly. And in the audio from the camera, buried in the background noise, they found that voice again. "Come back, come back, come back." Repeated over and over for the full 17 minutes. I didn't sleep that night. I went home as the sun was coming up, showered, changed clothes, and went right back to the office. Sierra was already there, looking as tired as I felt, surrounded by printouts and laptop screens. "I've been going through the camera footage from all 6 incidents," she said when I walked in, "looking for patterns, anything that might tell us what this thing wants. And in every case, it appears shortly after the power cuts. Moves through the apartment. Seems to be searching for something. When the apartment's empty, it just waits. When someone's home, she pulled up footage from one of the earlier incidents, one I hadn't seen before. It showed the interior of an apartment, the timestamp indicating it was from about 2 months ago. Sarah Kim's apartment, the graphic designer who'd gone missing. The footage showed Sarah asleep in her bed when the power cut. She woke up, confused in the darkness, and reached for her phone to use as a flashlight. And that's when the silhouette appeared in the doorway of her bedroom. Sarah saw it. I could tell by the way she froze, staring at something in the doorway that shouldn't have been there. But unlike us in apartment 6C, she could see it directly. The camera showed her backing up against the headboard, mouth open in a silent scream. The silhouette moved toward her, those 2 long arms extending, and Sarah tried to run. She made it 2 steps before those tendril-like hands touched her, and then she just stopped, frozen in place, eyes wide, still trying to scream but no sound coming out. And then, in a way that made my stomach turn, she started to fade. Not quickly, but gradually, like she was being erased from the world 1 pixel at a time. Her edges blurred first, then her features became indistinct, and within maybe 30 seconds she was just a vague outline. The silhouette wrapped around her and together they disappeared, leaving the bedroom empty. The power came back on exactly 17 minutes after it had cut. The camera recorded an empty apartment for the rest of the night. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. "That's what happened to all 3 missing persons," Sierra said. I found footage from the other 2 as well. Same pattern. The silhouette appears, makes contact, they fade out and disappear. And in each case, right before they vanish completely, the camera picks up audio. She played it for me. The voice was distorted, barely human, but the words were clear. "Come back with me. Come back. Come back." I sat down heavily in my chair, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't a crime in any conventional sense. This was something else, something that didn't fit into any category I'd been trained to investigate. "We need to notify the families," I said. "The missing persons, they're not coming back. They're not kidnapped in some basement waiting to be rescued. They're just gone. Gone where? I don't know. But wherever that thing comes from, that's where they are now." We spent the rest of the morning reviewing the evidence, preparing reports that I knew would sound insane to anyone who hadn't seen what we'd seen. By noon, word had spread through the bureau, and Rourke called me into his office. He looked old, sitting behind his desk with the case files spread out in front of him. He'd been with the bureau for 30 years, worked every kind of case imaginable, but this was something new even for him. "Tell me what you think is happening here," he said. "Honestly, I think something is coming into our world from somewhere else. I think it's been doing it for months, maybe longer, using the electrical infrastructure as a pathway. It searches apartments, looking for people, and when it finds someone, it takes them back with it. Back where? I don't know. Somewhere we can't follow. Somewhere that doesn't show up on cameras except as thermal signatures and infrared reflections." Rourke was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You know how this sounds." "Yes, sir, it sounds crazy. But the evidence is all there. The footage, the temperature readings, the missing persons. Something is taking people from their apartments, and we can't stop it because we can't even see it most of the time. The media's going to have a field day with this. Then we don't tell them. We put out a statement about a suspected serial kidnapper, warn residents to be cautious, but we don't mention what we've actually found. And the missing persons. Their families deserve answers. We tell them the truth, that their loved ones are gone, and we don't know where they are or how to get them back. It's not the answer they want, but it's the only one we have." Rourke approved my recommendations, and we held a press conference that afternoon. We kept it vague. talked about suspicious activity in the Montrose area, advised residents to check their security systems and report any unusual power outages. The reporters asked questions we couldn't answer, pushed for details we couldn't give, but we stuck to the script. That night, Sierra and I were back on surveillance, watching the power grid, waiting for the next incident. But it didn't come. 2:17 a.m. passed without any fluctuations, without any signs of the silhouette. The same thing happened the next night, and the night after that. A week went by with no incidents, and I started to think maybe it was over. Maybe whatever had been happening had run its course, and the silhouette had stopped coming. Then, on the 8th night, Sierra called me at 2:00 a.m. "Moreau, you need to get to the office right now." "What's happening?" "Just get here. You need to see this." I made it to the office in 15 minutes. Sierra was in the conference room with Trammell and 3 other HPD officers, all of them staring at a monitor showing a LAMP security feed. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "This is the feed from the old Houston Light and Power substation," Sierra said. "The one we raided last week. I've had a camera on it ever since, watching for any activity." The feed showed the exterior of the building, the same abandoned structure we'd searched. But now, there was light coming from inside, that same flickering glow we'd seen before. "Someone's back," I said. "Not someone. Look closer." She zoomed in on one of the boarded windows, and I could see through the gaps in the boards. The light inside wasn't from electrical equipment or flashlights. It was wrong. Too white, too bright, pulsing in a rhythm that made my eyes hurt to watch. And moving in front of the light, casting shadows on the walls, was a figure. Tall and thin and wrong, the same silhouette we'd been tracking. "It's there right now," Trammell said. "And it's not alone." Sierra changed the feed to a different camera, one she must have placed inside the building during our search. The view showed the main room where we'd found the command center, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. There were 3 of them. 3 silhouettes, all identical, all moving through the space in that gliding, impossible way. And they were doing something, working on something in the center of the room, though I couldn't tell what. "We need to move on this," Trammell said. "Now, while they're all in one place." "Move on them how?" I asked. "We can't even see them most of the time. How are we supposed to apprehend something we can't touch?" "We burn the building," one of the HPD officers suggested. "Trap them inside, burn it down, problem solved." "We're not burning anything," I said. "We don't know what these things are or what they want. For all we know, fire won't affect them at all." "Then what do you suggest?" I thought about Sarah Kim, about how she'd been able to see the silhouette directly before it took her. About Marcus, Elena Vasquez's boyfriend, who'd seen it in the hallway of her apartment. Some people could see them, at least sometimes, under certain conditions. "We go in," I said, "just me, alone. No weapons, no tactical gear. If these things are intelligent, if they're trying to communicate, then maybe I can talk to them." "That's suicide," Sierra said. "You saw what happened to those missing persons. The second it touches you, you're gone. Maybe. But what if they weren't taken? What if they went willingly? That voice on the recordings, 'Come back,' it sounds like an invitation, not a threat." "Come back from where? You think these things are trying to bring people home?" "I don't know what I think. But someone needs to try to understand this, and right now, I'm the only one who's seen them face to face and lived to talk about it." They argued with me for 20 minutes, tried to talk me out of it, but I'd made up my mind. At 2:45 a.m., I drove alone to the old substation, parked outside the fence, and walked up to the front door. The building was warm, much warmer than the cool August night, and I could feel that same electrical hum in the air that I'd noticed before. The door was unlocked, and I pushed it open, stepping into the hallway. The flickering light was brighter now, coming from the main room at the end of the hall. I walked toward it, my footsteps echoing on the concrete floor, my heart hammering in my chest. At the door to the main room, I stopped, took a deep breath, tried to prepare myself for whatever was on the other side. Then I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was full of light, that impossible white glow that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. And in the center of the room, I saw them. 3 silhouettes, just like in the footage, tall and thin, with those 2 long arms and oval heads. But I could see them now. Not clearly, not in detail, but I could see them directly, instead of just in reflections and infrared. They were there, real, solid in a way that didn't quite make sense to my eyes. They turned toward me, and I saw those eyes, dark and reflecting, looking at me with something that might have been curiosity. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice sounded small in the large room. "What do you want?" The nearest one moved toward me, gliding across the floor without seeming to walk. It stopped maybe 5 feet away, and I could feel cold radiating from it. That same cold I'd felt in apartment 6C. Then it spoke, and its voice was the same voice I'd heard on the recordings, distorted and mechanical, but trying so hard to be human. Lost, need to go back. Back where? It raised one of those tendril hands pointed upward, not at the ceiling, but beyond it, at something I couldn't see. Home. But the way is closed. Need help. Need people to come back. "The people you took," I said. "Sarah Kim, Alex Torres, James Wolcott. Where are they?" "Home, waiting. They came back. You come back too?" And suddenly I understood. These weren't monsters or kidnappers. They were lost, trying to find their way home, and the only way they could get there was by taking people with them. The electrical grid, the 17-minute windows, the specific buildings, it was all part of some pathway they'd found between their world and ours. "I can't come back with you," I said. "This is my home, but maybe I can help you find another way." The silhouette tilted its head, and for a moment I thought I saw sadness in those dark eyes. Then it reached out, and before I could back away, one of those tendril hands touched my forehead. The world went white. I woke up in a hospital bed with no memory of how I got there. Sierra was sitting in a chair beside the bed, and when she saw my eyes open, she grabbed my hand. "Thank God," she said. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. What happened?" "We don't know. We were monitoring you on the remote cameras, and we saw you enter the building. Then there was this flash of light, so bright it overloaded the cameras, and when the feed came back, you were lying on the floor. The silhouettes were gone. Where am I?" "Memorial Herman. You were completely unresponsive when we found you, but all your vital signs were normal. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong." I tried to sit up, but my body felt weak, like I'd been lying still for much longer than 3 days. "The substation. We need to get back there. It's gone, Moreau. The whole building. It burned down the same night you went in. Fire department said it was an electrical fire, probably caused by all that old equipment. By the time they got there, the whole structure was engulfed. And the silhouettes?" Sierra shook her head. "No trace of them. No bodies. No evidence they were ever there. Just ash and melted metal." I lay back against the pillow, trying to process this. I remembered entering the building, seeing the silhouettes, talking to them, and then that touch, and the white light, and there was something else. A memory that didn't feel like mine. I remembered being somewhere else, somewhere that was all white light and strange geometry, where the air tasted like copper and static. I remembered seeing people there, Sarah Kim and Alex Torres and James Wolcott, and they were alive but different, changed in ways I couldn't articulate. And I remembered the silhouettes showing me things, sharing something with me through that touch. Knowledge, maybe, or understanding. They weren't from another dimension or another planet. They were from here, from Earth, but from a different time, a future so far ahead that humanity was gone, evolved, or extinct, or transformed into something unrecognizable. They'd been trying to come back, to warn us, or save us, or just to see what we'd been like before the change. But the pathway they'd found was unstable, dangerous, and every time they came through it damaged them, made them less substantial, harder to hold together. The people they'd taken, they hadn't been kidnapped. They'd volunteered, gone willingly to help the silhouettes find their way home, and in return, they'd been shown wonders, given glimpses of what humanity would become if we survived long enough. But I couldn't tell anyone this. It sounded insane even to me, and I wasn't sure how much of it was real memory and how much was fever dream from lying unconscious for 3 days. "The missing persons," I said. "Any trace of them?" "No, they're still gone. But Moreau, something weird happened while you were unconscious. The families of all 3 missing persons called us, said they'd each received a message." "What kind of message?" Sierra pulled out her phone, showed me a photograph. It was a text message from Sarah Kim's phone, sent to her mother at 3:00 a.m. on the night I'd entered the substation. "I'm okay. I'm home. Don't look for me. I love you." The other 2 missing persons had sent similar messages all at the same time, all saying essentially the same thing. They were okay. They were where they needed to be, and they weren't coming back. The phone company confirmed the messages had been sent from the missing persons' phones, but they couldn't explain how. All 3 phones were turned off. Their last known locations were the apartments where the people had disappeared, and there was no cell tower activity that could account for the transmissions. The messages had just appeared, like they'd been sent from somewhere outside our normal communications network. I was discharged from the hospital 2 days later, with instructions to take it easy and follow up with a neurologist to make sure there was no lasting damage. Sierra drove me home, and we sat in my driveway for a while, not talking, just looking at my house and the ordinary suburban street beyond. "What do you think really happened?" she asked finally. "I think we encountered something we weren't equipped to understand," I said. "And I think it's over now. The substation's gone, the silhouettes haven't appeared anywhere else, and the missing persons aren't coming back. But you saw something in there. When that thing touched you, you saw something. Maybe, or maybe I just had a hallucination from electrical shock. Either way, it doesn't matter now." But it did matter. In the weeks that followed, I found myself thinking about those silhouettes constantly, about their sad eyes and their desperate need to go home. I thought about the future they came from, that white light place where humanity had become something else. And I thought about the choice they'd given those 3 people. Stay in the present and live normal lives, or come with us and see wonders beyond imagination. 3 people had chosen to go, and I didn't think they'd been wrong. The Bureau closed the case officially, listing it as a series of unexplained disappearances likely related to an organized crime operation that had since been disrupted. The families accepted the explanation, or at least stopped asking questions. The media moved on to other stories, but I kept the case files, all the footage and photographs and reports. I locked them in a safe in my home office, and sometimes late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd take them out and review them, looking for answers that didn't exist, or maybe looking for proof that I hadn't imagined the whole thing. 6 months after the incident, I got a package in the mail. No return address, just a plain brown envelope with my name on it. Inside was a photograph, a Polaroid-style image that showed something I couldn't quite make sense of. It looked like a city, but the architecture was wrong. Buildings that twisted in impossible ways, streets that seemed to curve upward into the sky. And in the foreground, standing together and smiling, were 4 people I recognized. Sarah Kim, Alex Torres, James Wolcott. And standing with them, looking happy and whole and alive, was a 4th person who I'd thought was dead. It was me. Or someone who looked exactly like me, but different somehow, changed in subtle ways I couldn't identify. On the back of the photo, written in handwriting that looked like mine but wasn't, was a single sentence: "Thank you for showing us the way back. Now we're showing you the way forward." I showed the photo to Sierra, and she stared at it for a long time before looking up at me. "This is impossible," she said. "I know. You can't be in 2 places at once. I know. But you're here, right now, sitting in front of me. Which means that person in the photo, whoever they are, they're not you. Or maybe I went with them," I said quietly. When that silhouette touched me, maybe some part of me did go back with them. And maybe that part is still there, in that white light place, learning what they wanted to teach us. That's insane. Yeah, it is. But I kept the photo anyway. Put it in the safe with the case files, and sometimes when I looked at it, I swore I could see that city in the background moving, changing, growing. And I could feel something pulling at me, a gentle insistence that I should come back, that I should rejoin the part of myself that had gone ahead. I never told anyone about this. Not Sierra, not Rourke, not the therapist the Bureau insisted I see after the incident. I just kept working cases, doing my job, living my life. But every night at 2:17 a.m., I'd wake up and feel that pull, stronger each time. And I'd look at my hands in the darkness and wonder if I was really here, or if the real me was somewhere else, in a city that shouldn't exist, with people who'd chosen to become something more than human. The incidents in Montrose never resumed. No more power outages, no more silhouettes, no more people disappearing from their apartments. But sometimes, on certain nights when the air felt electric and wrong, I'd drive through that neighborhood and look at those apartment buildings, and I'd wonder which of the people living there would be next. Which of them would wake up to find their lights flickering, their air growing cold, and a tall, thin figure standing in their bedroom doorway, reaching out with impossible hands and speaking in a voice that sounded almost human. Come back with me." And I'd wonder if they'd go, if they'd take that hand and step through into the white light, leaving everything behind for a chance to see what we're all becoming, given enough time. I think I know what I'd choose. I think I already chose, that night in the substation when I let one of them touch me. I just don't know if the choice has been completed yet, or if I'm still in some in-between state, waiting for the final transition. Sometimes I catch myself doing things I don't remember deciding to do. Researching future technologies, reading theoretical physics papers about quantum entanglement and parallel dimensions, leaving my apartment at odd hours, and finding myself standing outside the ruins of the old substation, staring at the empty lot where it used to stand. And twice now, I've woken up with dust on my shoes that shouldn't be there, and photographs on my phone showing places I don't remember visiting, places that look wrong, that hurt to look at, where the geometry doesn't quite work right. I think they're still out there. The silhouettes, or whatever they really are. I think they're watching me, waiting for me to be ready, to fully accept what I already know, that I'm not entirely here anymore, that some part of me is already there, in that future place, and it's only a matter of time before the rest of me follows. Sierra noticed the change in me. Last week, she asked me directly if I was okay, if I needed to take some time off, see someone professional. I'm fine, I told her. Just tired. but I saw the way she looked at me, the concern in her eyes. And I saw her glance at my hands, at the way my fingers seemed to bend just slightly wrong, at angles that human fingers shouldn't bend. She saw it, and she knew, but she didn't say anything. Because what could she say? That her partner, her friend, was slowly becoming something else. That the thing he'd encountered in that substation had left a mark on him that was still spreading, still changing him. She just squeezed my shoulder and told me to get some rest. That was 3 days ago. Since then, I've been preparing. Writing this account, organizing my affairs, saying goodbye to people without making it obvious that's what I'm doing. Because tonight, at 2:17 a.m., I'm going back to where the substation used to be. And if they come for me, if they reach out with those impossible hands and offer me that choice again, I'm not going to refuse. I'm going to take their hand, step into the white light, go back to where part of me is already waiting. I don't know what I'll find there. I don't know what I'll become, or if there's any coming back from it. But I know I can't stay here. Can't keep living this half-life, split between two worlds, two versions of myself. It's time to become whole again, even if that means becoming something that isn't quite human anymore. The Bureau will list me as missing eventually. They'll search my apartment, find this account, maybe show it to the right people. Maybe someone will understand what happened here, what these silhouettes really were and why they came. Or maybe they'll just think I had a breakdown, that the case drove me crazy and I walked off into the night and never came back. Either way, it doesn't matter now. The clock on my computer shows 2:04 a.m. 3 minutes left. I can feel them already, reaching across whatever distance separates us, calling me home. The border country changes you if you spend enough time out here. The heat, the emptiness, the sense that you're standing at the edge of something vast and indifferent. It gets inside you and doesn't let go. I've worked this territory for 8 years now, assigned to the FBI's El Paso field office with a focus on border crimes, and I thought I'd seen everything this desolate stretch of Texas and Mexico had to offer. Cartel violence, human trafficking, smuggling operations that moved everything from drugs to antiquities across the invisible line that separates two countries. But nothing in my experience prepared me for what we found at Border Mile 46. My name is Jonas Kincaid, Special Agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is my account of what happened in October 2023, and I'm filing it because the official report doesn't capture what actually occurred out there in the desert. Some things can't be put into the neat categories that government forms require. It started with a routine call from Border Patrol on a Thursday morning. I was in the office working through paperwork when my phone rang, and I saw it was Vera Montclair, the Border Patrol liaison I'd worked with on dozens of cases over the years. Vera was solid, the kind of agent who'd spent 20 years on the border and knew every wash, every trail, every spot where crossers tried to make it north. If she was calling me directly instead of going through official channels, something was wrong. "Kincaid, we've got a situation at mile 46, she said without preamble. "One of our patrol trucks went dark last night. We found it this morning, but the crew's gone. Define gone. Gone, as in not there. Trucks sitting on the patrol road, engines still running, doors open, but no sign of either agent. Their weapons are still in the cab, radios are there, everything except the people." I grabbed my keys and was heading for the door before she finished talking. "I'm on my way. Don't let anyone touch anything until I get there." The drive from El Paso to Border Mile 46 took me almost 2 hours, heading east on I-10 and then south on a series of progressively worse roads until I was on dirt tracks that barely qualified as navigable. The landscape out here is unforgiving, all sagebrush and rocky soil, mountains rising in the distance like broken teeth against the pale sky. The temperature was already pushing 90 degrees, even though it was only October, and the sun felt like it was burning through the windshield. I'd been to Mile 46 before, knew it as one of the more remote sections of the Border Patrol area. There's nothing out here except desert and the occasional ranch, miles between any kind of civilization. The patrol road runs parallel to the border itself, marked every mile with numbered posts that help agents coordinate their positions. Mile 46 sits in a valley between two low ridges, a spot where smugglers sometimes try to move people or goods across because the terrain provides some cover from aerial surveillance. When I arrived, there were already 3 Border Patrol vehicles on scene, agents standing around looking uncomfortable in a way that told me they didn't like what they were dealing with. Vera was there talking to Sheriff Colton Madrigal from the Hudspeth County Sheriff's Office, a big man with weathered skin and eyes that had seen too much of what the border could do to people. I parked and walked over, and Vera came to meet me halfway. She looked tired, more tired than I'd seen her in a long time. "Thanks for coming out," she said. "I know this is technically our jurisdiction, but I wanted FBI eyes on it from the start. What have you got?" She led me over to the Border Patrol truck, a white and green Silverado that sat on the dirt road with both front doors hanging open. The engine was off now, but Vera said it had been running when they found it at dawn. The vehicle looked completely normal, no damage, no signs of a struggle. The interior was clean, 2 coffee cups in the holders, a half-eaten sandwich on the dashboard, paperwork scattered on the passenger seat. "Agents Martinez and Chen," Vera said. "Both experienced, both been working this sector for years. They checked in at 2:47 a.m., said they were doing a routine patrol sweep of Mile 46 to Mile 52. That was their last communication." "What time did you find the truck?" 6:23 a.m., when they didn't check in for their 6:00 a.m. status update. We started trying to raise them on the radio. No response. Supervisor sent a unit to their last known position, and they found this. I walked around the vehicle, looking for anything unusual. The tires were intact, no bullet holes, no blood. The ground around the truck was hard-packed dirt and rock, difficult terrain for tracking, but I could see boot prints leading away from the driver's side door, heading south toward the border itself. "Anyone follow those tracks?" I asked. "About 50 yards, Sheriff Madrigal said, walking over to join us. "They just stop. Not fade out, not get covered by wind, just stop like whoever was making them disappeared mid-step." I'd heard that before, knew it was the kind of thing that happened in desert terrain when wind and sun could erase tracks in hours. But the sheriff's expression told me he didn't think it was that simple. "Show me," I said. We walked south from the truck, following the boot prints. They were clear at first, deep impressions in the dirt showing someone walking with purpose, not running or stumbling. About 40 yards from the truck, we reached a spot where the ground changed slightly, becoming sandier, and the prints were still visible. Then, at what I estimated was about 50 yards out, they just ended. One moment there was a clear left boot print, the next there was nothing. The sand ahead was undisturbed, smooth, showing no indication anyone had walked through it. "What about the other agent?" I asked. "Chen, any tracks from the passenger side?" "No," Vera said. "No tracks at all, like she never got out of the vehicle." We walked back to the truck, and I examined the passenger side more carefully. The door was open, but there were no tracks in the dirt, no disturbance of the ground. If Chen had gotten out, she hadn't done it on this side of the vehicle. "The truck has cameras, right?" I asked. "Dashboard cam, maybe rear-facing?" Vera nodded. "Standard equipment, dash cam, and there's a camera that monitors the cargo bed. We pulled the SD cards, but there's a problem." She led me to one of the Border Patrol supervisor vehicles, where a laptop was set up showing video feeds. She pulled up the dashcam footage and hit play. The video showed the view from the truck's dashboard, the patrol road stretching ahead in the darkness, illuminated by the headlights. The timestamp showed 3:14 a.m. Everything looked normal, the truck moving at a steady pace, Martinez visible in the driver's seat, Chen beside him checking something on a tablet. At 3:16:02, the video stuttered. Not a freeze, but a skip, like several frames had been dropped. When it resumed, the image was distorted, colors bleeding into each other. The picture rolling like an old analog TV with poor reception. At 3:16:18, the camera went completely dark. Not black screen dark, but something else. A kind of visual static that hurt to look at. I could see patterns in it, almost like interference patterns, swirling and pulsing. The distortion continued for exactly 1 minute, and then at 3:17:18, the feed came back. The truck was stopped, both doors open, the headlights illuminating empty desert. There was no one in the vehicle, and the camera recorded nothing but stillness for the next 3 hours until the recovery team arrived. "What about the rear camera?" I asked. Vera pulled up that feed. It showed a similar pattern. Normal footage until 3:16, then the same distortion and static, then empty truck bed when the image cleared. "The audio's worse," she said, and turned up the volume. The first thing I heard was the normal sounds of a vehicle in motion, engine noise, the crunch of tires on dirt. Then, at the moment the video started to distort, the audio became a mess of static and interference. But underneath it, I could hear something else. A sound that was almost like voices, multiple voices overlapping, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Or maybe not speaking. Maybe just making sounds that coincidentally resembled speech. When the video cleared and showed the empty truck, the audio was completely silent. No engine noise, no wind, nothing. Just perfect silence that lasted until the recovery team arrived. "Have your tech people looked at this?" I asked. "Yeah, they say the file isn't corrupted. The data's intact. Whatever happened, it happened to the cameras themselves, not the recording." Sheriff Madrigal had been quiet, but now he spoke up. "We've had weird stuff happen out here before. Radios cutting out, compasses spinning, people seeing lights in the sky. Border country's always been strange, but this is different." "How so?" "Because usually, when someone disappears out here, we find them eventually. Maybe not alive, but we find them. Bodies in the desert, vehicles abandoned, something. But Martinez and Chen, it's like they just ceased to exist." I spent the next hour processing the scene, taking photos, collecting what little evidence there was. The coffee cups had fingerprints that would match Martinez and Chen. The sandwich had bite marks that could be analyzed, but none of it would tell us where they'd gone or what had happened to them. What bothered me most were the wet footprints. I found them completely by accident walking around the back of the truck looking for any disturbed ground I might have missed. Near the rear passenger side tire, there was a print in the dirt. Not a boot print, but a bare footprint. Small, like a child's or a small woman's. And it was wet, the dirt around it dark with moisture. I knelt down to examine it closer. The print was clear, showing 5 toes, a defined heel, the arch of a foot. And it was definitely wet. The moisture fresh enough that when I touched it, my finger came away damp, which made no sense. We were in the middle of the desert in October, and there'd been no rain in this area for over a month. The nearest water source was a stock tank about 3 miles away. There was no reason for there to be wet footprints here. I called Vera over, showed her what I'd found. "That's not possible," she said, staring at the print. And yet, there it is. We searched the area around the truck more carefully, found 3 more wet prints, all leading away from the vehicle toward the south, toward Mexico. They were spaced oddly, the stride too long for someone with feet that small, and they seemed to appear and disappear randomly. One print here, then nothing for 15 feet, then another print, then nothing again. Sheriff Madrigal brought over evidence collection kit, and I made casts of 2 of the clearest prints before the desert sun could evaporate the moisture. The wet dirt felt wrong in my hands, cold despite the heat, and it had a smell to it that I couldn't identify. Not organic decay, not chemical, but something else, something that made my nose itch and my eyes water slightly. By noon, we'd documented everything we could find at the scene. The truck was loaded onto a flatbed to be taken to a secure facility for more detailed forensic examination, and the search teams were organizing to sweep the area for any sign of Martinez and Chen. Helicopters were being brought in, tracking dogs, the full resources of Border Patrol and the FBI. But I had a feeling it wouldn't matter. Whatever had happened to those 2 agents, it wasn't something that would show up in a normal search pattern. Vera and I drove back to the El Paso office together, and we were both quiet for most of the trip. Finally, about 20 miles from the city, she said, "You ever work anything like this before?" "Disappearances? Yeah, plenty." "No, I mean like this. The wet footprints in the desert, the camera footage, the way the tracks just stop. This doesn't feel like a normal disappearance. What does it feel like?" She was quiet for a moment. Like something took them. Not someone, something. And I don't think we're going to find them alive. I didn't disagree, but I couldn't say that officially. FBI agents don't work on feelings or intuition. We work on evidence and facts. But the evidence in this case was pointing toward something that didn't fit any rational explanation, and the facts were impossible. When we got to the office, I filed my initial report and started coordinating with the search teams. By evening, over 50 people were combing the desert around mile 46, using thermal imaging and drones and every piece of technology we had available. They found nothing except more of those wet footprints, scattered randomly across a half-mile area, all of them fresh, all of them impossible. I was reviewing the drone footage at my desk around 9 p.m. when something caught my attention. The drones had been flying a grid pattern over the search area, recording everything in high-definition thermal and visual spectrum. Most of it was just empty desert, rocks and brush and the occasional animal. But in one sequence, shot at 7:34 p.m., there was something on the horizon. The drone was facing south toward Mexico, and in the distance, maybe 5 or 6 miles away, there was a light. Not a vehicle light or a fire, but something else. Something that glowed white and steady against the darkening sky. I zoomed in as much as the footage allowed, but the light was too far away to make out details. It appeared in frame for maybe 15 seconds, then it was gone. Not moving away, not fading out, just gone. Like someone had flipped a switch. I marked the timestamp and the GPS coordinates, cross-referenced them with other drone footage from around the same time. 2 other drones had been in the air, both with cameras pointed in different directions. I pulled up their footage and found something interesting. One of the other drones, flying about 2 miles east of the first one, had also captured the light. From that angle it looked different, more vertical, like a pillar or column of white light stretching from the ground up into the sky. And around the base of it, I could see movement, dark shapes that might have been people but moved in ways that looked wrong. The footage lasted 18 seconds, and then the light was gone, and the shapes with it. I saved all 3 video files, encrypted them, and sent copies to our technical analysis team with a priority flag. Then I sat back in my chair and tried to think through what I was seeing. 2 experienced Border Patrol agents disappear from their vehicle at 3:16 a.m. Their truck is found hours later with wet footprints around it despite the desert being completely dry. Camera footage shows distortion and strange audio at the moment of disappearance, and now drone footage showing mysterious lights on the horizon in the same general area. None of it made sense individually, and it made even less sense taken together. My phone rang, and I saw it was Vera. "Kincaid, we got something. Search team found tracks about 2 miles south of where the truck was. Boot tracks? Martinez and Chen's? No, more of those wet footprints. Hundreds of them, all over an area about the size of a football field. And Jonas, they're all pointing north. Like something came from the south and headed toward where the truck was." I grabbed my keys. "I'm coming back out. Don't let anyone contaminate the site." The drive back to mile 46 took me through darkness this time. The highway empty except for the occasional semi-truck heading east. I made it in just over 90 minutes, pushing my vehicle faster than I should have, and found the search team staging area lit up with portable lights and generators. Vera met me at the perimeter, handed me a flashlight and a radio. "Sight's about half a mile that way," she said, pointing south into the darkness. "We've got it lit up and marked off. You need to see this in person because I don't think photos are going to capture it." We hiked through the desert in silence, following a trail that had been marked with chemical light sticks. The terrain here was rougher than around the truck. More rocks and dry wash gullies that made walking difficult in the dark. After about 20 minutes, I saw lights ahead, and we emerged into an area that had been set up like an archaeological dig site. Portable floodlights illuminated a roughly circular area maybe 100 yards across, and within that circle, the ground was covered in footprints. Not randomly scattered, but arranged in patterns that looked almost deliberate. Lines of prints radiating out from the center. Spirals. Geometric shapes that couldn't have occurred naturally. And every single print was wet, dark moisture soaking into the pale dirt. "What the hell?" I said quietly. Sheriff Madrigal was there, along with half a dozen deputies and Border Patrol agents, all of them standing at the edge of the marked area looking uncomfortable. "We found it about 2 hours ago," he said. "Search team was working a grid pattern and saw the wet ground from a distance. Thought maybe there was an underground spring or something, but when we got closer," he trailed off, gestured at the impossible scene in front of us. I walked to the edge of the marked area, knelt down to examine the closest prints. They were the same as the ones we'd found near the truck. Small, bare feet, human-looking, but something about the proportions seemed slightly off. The toes were too long maybe, or the arch too pronounced, and they were fresh. Despite hours of desert heat, the moisture hadn't evaporated. If anything, the prints looked wetter now than they had at the truck site. "Anyone tried to collect samples?" I asked. "Yeah," Vera said. "We got some of the wet dirt into evidence containers. But Jonas, watch this." She walked over to one of the clearer prints, pulled out a small evidence kit, and used a cotton swab to collect some of the moisture. The swab came away wet, as expected. But then, as I watched, the moisture on the swab began to glow faintly, a pale greenish light that was barely visible under the floodlights but definitely there. "What is that?" I asked. "No idea. It's not radioactive. We checked. It's not any kind of chemical phosphorescence we recognize. It just glows." I took the swab from her, examined it closely. The glow was real, consistent, not fading over time. And when I held it close to my face, I could smell that same strange odor I'd noticed at the truck site. That chemical, not chemical scent that made my sinuses itch. We spent the next 3 hours documenting the site, photographing every angle, collecting samples of the wet dirt, mapping the patterns of the footprints. The work was methodical and professional, but I could feel the unease among the team. Everyone knew this wasn't normal. Wasn't something that could be explained by conventional means. Around midnight, I was standing at the center of the circular area, trying to understand the pattern of the prints, when I noticed something. The ground under my feet felt different, softer somehow, and when I shined my flashlight down, I could see that the dirt here was darker, wetter than anywhere else in the area. And it was warm. Not hot, but definitely warmer than the surrounding desert soil should be after nightfall. I called Vera over, had her feel it. "That's not normal," she said. "Ground temperature should be dropping fast this time of night. This feels like it's got a heat source under it. We need to know what's down there. Get a ground-penetrating radar unit out here." She made the call, and 2 hours later, a team arrived with GPR equipment. They set it up and began scanning the central area, the technician watching the screen and making notes. "There's something down there," he said, after about 15 minutes of scanning. "About 6 feet deep, maybe 8 feet across. It's not rock, the density's wrong for that. Could be a void, some kind of natural cavern." "Could be a body?" I asked, thinking about Martinez and Chen. "If it is, it's big, or there's multiple bodies, but honestly, I've never seen a GPR signature quite like this. Whatever it is, it's reflecting the signal in a weird way, like it's not entirely solid." We discussed excavating, bringing in equipment to dig, but Sheriff Madrigal pointed out that we'd need proper permits and a lot more resources if we were going to start major earth moving in the middle of the night. We agreed to secure the site and come back at dawn with the full team. I didn't want to leave, felt like we were abandoning something important, but there was nothing more we could do in the darkness. We set up a perimeter, left 3 deputies to guard the site, and headed back to the staging area. It was almost 3 a.m. when I finally made it back to El Paso, exhausted and confused and no closer to understanding what had happened to Martinez and Chen. I fell asleep at my desk, head on my arms, and dreamed of wet footprints leading into darkness. I woke to my phone ringing, sunlight streaming through the office window. I'd slept maybe 3 hours, and every muscle in my body ached from the desert hiking and the stress. The caller ID showed Vera's number. "Yeah," I answered, my voice rough. "We've got a problem. The site at mile 46, the one we secured last night with the footprints." I sat up, suddenly wide awake. "What happened?" "It's gone. Not the location, but the prints. All of them. The deputies on guard said everything was fine until about 3:16 a.m., and then they heard this sound, like wind or rushing water. When they went to check, all the wet footprints had dried up. Just gone, like they were never there." "That's not possible. We have photos, samples. The samples are gone too. Every evidence container we filled with the wet dirt, it's dry now. Just regular desert soil. And Jonas, the glow, that green phosphorescence, it's not showing up on any of the samples. They're all inert." I felt cold despite the warm office. "What about the photos? The documentation?" "Photos are fine. They show the prints clear as day. But without the physical evidence, without the moisture and the glow, it's just pictures of some marks in the dirt. Could be anything." I told her I'd be there within 2 hours and started making calls. Our technical team, the crime lab, anyone who might have analyzed samples from the site. Everyone reported the same thing. The samples had changed overnight, the moisture evaporating, the unusual properties disappearing like they'd never existed. By the time I made it back to mile 46, it was almost noon. The site looked completely different in daylight, just another patch of desert with some disturbed ground. The circular pattern was still faintly visible if you knew what to look for, but the wet footprints were gone, the whole area dry and unremarkable. Sheriff Madrigal was there with Vera, both of them looking frustrated and exhausted. 3 deputies, Madrigal said. 3 trained law enforcement officers standing guard all night, and they all say the same thing. Everything was normal until 3:16, then that sound, then nothing. No one approached the site, no vehicles, no people. The prints just dried up on their own. 3:16, I said. Same time the Border Patrol truck cameras failed. What is it about that specific time? Nobody had an answer. We brought in the GPR equipment again, rescanned the area where we'd found that anomaly the night before. The technician ran multiple passes, checked his equipment, ran the scans again. There's nothing there, he finally said. No void, no cavity, no anomalous readings, just solid ground. That's impossible. You found something last night. I saw the readings. I know what I saw, but I'm telling you, there's nothing there now. It's like the ground filled in overnight, or whatever was down there moved. I had him email me copies of the previous night's scans, proof that we hadn't imagined it. Then I stood in the center of that circular area and tried to think through what we knew. 2 agents disappear at 3:16 a.m. Camera footage shows distortion at that exact time. Wet footprints appear in the desert, in patterns that suggest intelligent design. A void under the ground that disappears overnight, and a mysterious light on the horizon captured by drone footage. It felt like we were looking at pieces of different puzzles, none of them fitting together in any logical way. My phone buzzed with a text from our technical analyst. They'd finished processing the drone footage I'd sent them, and there was something I needed to see. I pulled it up on my tablet, an enhanced and stabilized version of the footage showing that pillar of white light. The analyst had zoomed in on the dark shapes moving around the base of it, run them through image enhancement and pattern recognition software. What I saw made my hands shake. The shapes weren't people. They were human-sized, roughly, but the proportions were wrong. Too tall, too thin, limbs that seemed to bend in extra places, and they moved in coordinated patterns, like they were performing some kind of ritual or work, all of them focused on the pillar of light. In one enhanced frame, I could make out details that had been too distant in the original footage. One of the shapes had its arms raised, and I could see what looked like fingers, but there were too many of them, long and segmented like insect legs. Another shape was bent at an angle that no human spine could achieve, its head tilted back at what should have been a fatal angle. And in the background, near the base of the light pillar, there were 2 smaller shapes. Human-sized, human-proportioned, wearing what looked like uniforms. Martinez and Chen. I showed the footage to Vera and Madrigal, watched their faces as they processed what they were seeing. "We need to go there," Vera said. "Those coordinates, that's where the light was. We need to get a team out there now." "That's 5 miles into Mexico," Madrigal pointed out. "We don't have jurisdiction." "I don't care about jurisdiction. We have 2 missing agents who might still be alive, and we know where they were taken. We coordinate with Mexican authorities, get permission, whatever it takes." I made the calls, contacted the FBI's legal attaché in Mexico City, started working through the diplomatic channels that would let us operate south of the border. It took hours, involved conversations with people in Washington and Mexico City and the State Department. But by evening we had authorization for a joint operation with Mexican federal police. The team assembled at mile 46 just after sunset. 12 FBI agents, 15 Border Patrol, 10 Mexican federales, and Sheriff Madrigal with 3 of his deputies. We had armored vehicles, medical support, communications equipment, everything we'd need for a potential hostage rescue in remote terrain. The plan was simple. Drive to the coordinates where the drone had spotted the light, search for any evidence of Martinez and Chen, and extract them if possible. We'd coordinate with additional units positioned along the border, ready to provide support if needed. What we weren't prepared for was what we'd actually find out there. The drive into Mexico was tense and quiet. We crossed the border at an official checkpoint, the Mexican federales leading the way through dirt roads that got progressively worse the farther south we went. The terrain here was rougher than on the U.S. side, more mountains and arroyos, the kind of landscape where you could hide anything and no one would ever find it. After about 90 minutes of driving, we reached the coordinates. The lead vehicle stopped, and everyone deployed, spreading out in a tactical formation, weapons ready. I stayed with the command vehicle, monitoring radio traffic and watching the tactical displays. The sun had set fully now, and we were operating under artificial light, flashlights and vehicle-mounted spotlights illuminating the immediate area. The location was a shallow valley between two ridges, nothing particularly distinctive about it except for one detail that everyone noticed immediately. The ground was wet, not just damp, but soaking wet, like there'd been a heavy rain recently. Except there hadn't been rain here any more than there had been at mile 46. The moisture had no source, no explanation. It was just there. And in the wet ground, there were footprints. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all those same small bare feet, creating patterns that spiraled out from a central point. At the center, there was a circle maybe 20 feet across where the ground was darker than the surrounding area. And in that circle, there were two sets of boot prints. The right size, the right pattern to match Border Patrol issue boots. "We've got tracks," one of the tactical team leaders reported over the radio. "Two sets, both adult size, heading south from the central circle." "Follow them," I ordered. "Carefully. Watch for anything unusual." The team moved forward, following the boot tracks. I watched through the video feed from their helmet cameras as they advanced through the wet ground, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. The tracks led south for about 200 yards, then up the side of one of the ridges. The team climbed, maintaining formation, and reached the top of the ridge. And there, on the other side, they found something that stopped them in their tracks. There was a structure. Not a building, not exactly, but something that looked like architecture. It was maybe 30 feet tall, made of something that looked like stone but reflected light in a way stone shouldn't. The surface had a wet sheen to it, and it seemed to pulse faintly, like it was breathing. The structure was roughly triangular, with smooth sides that met at angles that looked wrong, that made my eyes hurt to look at through the video feed. There were openings in it, dark spaces that might have been doorways or windows, but they were positioned in ways that defied normal geometry. "What the hell is that?" someone asked over the radio. "Unknown structure," the team leader reported. "Approaching to investigate." "Negative," I said immediately. "Hold position. Do not approach until we can get more intel." But one of the federales, either not hearing the order or choosing to ignore it, moved closer to the structure. He was maybe 10 feet from the nearest opening when something happened. The structure flashed, that same white light we'd seen in the drone footage. So bright, it overloaded the helmet cameras. When the image came back, the federale was on the ground, and the structure was pulsing more rapidly, the light growing brighter. Man down, someone shouted. The team rushed forward to grab their fallen colleague, dragged him back from the structure. The medic started working on him immediately, checking vitals, looking for injuries. "He's breathing," the medic reported. "Pulse is strong but irregular. No visible wounds. He's just unconscious." "Get him back to the vehicles," I ordered. "Everyone else, pull back to a safe distance. Nobody approaches that structure until we figure out what it is." The team retreated, carrying the unconscious federale, and established a perimeter about 100 yards from the structure. I watched through multiple camera angles as the thing continued to pulse, the light growing brighter and dimmer in a steady rhythm. Vera was beside me in the command vehicle, staring at the monitors. That's not natural, she said. That's not anything human-made either. What is it? I don't know, but those boot prints led right to it. Martinez and Chen went in there, or near it. I got on the radio to the tactical team leader. Do you have visual on anyone near the structure? Any movement, any signs of our missing agents? Negative. The structure appears empty, but we can't see into those openings. They're too dark, like they absorb light. I made a decision that I knew might be wrong, but felt necessary. I'm coming up there. I need to see this in person. Vera tried to argue with me, said it was too dangerous, that we should wait for specialist teams. But I'd already spent 3 days watching evidence disappear, watching impossible things happen, and I needed to understand what we were dealing with. Sheriff Madrigal came with me, bringing night vision equipment and a portable radio scanner. We climbed the ridge, joined the tactical team at their perimeter, and I got my first in-person look at the structure. It was worse than the video had shown. The wrongness of it was more apparent. The way the angles didn't quite work, the way it seemed to be simultaneously solid and somehow insubstantial. Looking at it made my head hurt, made me feel slightly nauseous. "Can you hear that?" Madrigal asked. I listened. Under the sound of wind and the distant rumble of the vehicle, there was something else. A low-frequency hum, almost below the threshold of hearing, that seemed to vibrate in my chest. Yeah. What is that? I don't know, but my radio scanner's going crazy. He showed me the device, which was cycling through frequencies, picking up signals that shouldn't be there. Voices speaking in unknown languages, bursts of data that sounded like old modem tones, and underneath it all, that same humming sound. One of the federales who spoke some English came over looking shaken. "I know this place," he said. "The old ones, the people who lived here before the Spanish, they had stories about it. They said there was a door in the desert, a place where the sky came down to the earth. They said things came through it sometimes, things that walked like men but were not men." "How old are these stories?" I asked. "Hundreds of years, maybe thousands. But they always said the door was here, in this valley." I looked at the structure again, that impossible architecture that pulsed with white light. A door, a gateway, between what and what, I couldn't begin to guess. My radio crackled and I heard Vera's voice, urgent and strained. "Jonas, we're picking up something on the seismic monitors. There's movement underground, something big, heading toward your position." "How big?" "I don't know. The readings don't make sense. But whatever it is, it's maybe half a mile away and closing fast." "Everyone fall back to the vehicles," I ordered. "Now." We started moving, but we'd only gone about 50 feet when the ground started shaking. Not violently, but a steady vibration that made it hard to keep balance. And the structure, that impossible thing, it flared bright white, brighter than before. Bright enough that I had to shield my eyes. When I could see again, there were figures emerging from the dark openings in the structure. Tall, thin figures that moved in that same wrong way I'd seen in the drone footage. They weren't walking. They were gliding, floating just above the wet ground, and they were coming toward us. "Open fire!" someone shouted, and gunfire erupted. Bullets hit the figures. I saw the impacts, but nothing happened. The figures kept coming, unaffected, moving with that eerie coordination. They weren't attacking, weren't showing aggression. They were just approaching, their two long arms extended. "Cease fire!" I yelled. "Hold your fire!" The shooting stopped, and in the sudden silence, I could hear that humming again, louder now, and underneath it, voices. The same voices from the camera audio, speaking in that language that wasn't quite language. The figures stopped about 20 feet from us, and I got my first clear look at them. They were humanoid, roughly 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs and heads that were oval-shaped and smooth. Where faces should be, there was nothing, just smooth, dark surface. But I could feel them looking at us, examining us. One of them raised an arm, pointing not at us, but past us toward the vehicles, toward the border, toward the north. And then it spoke, and its voice was the sound from the radio interference, distorted and layered but forming recognizable words. They came. They crossed. They are with us now. You cannot have them back. Martinez and Chen, I said, my voice shaking. Where are they? The figure tilted its head, and the gesture looked almost curious. They are becoming. They chose to become. As you may choose. What does that mean? What are you? We are the between. We are what waits in the spaces. We are old, older than your words. This place, this door, it has always been open. You close your eyes and do not see, but it is always open. Sheriff Madrigal was beside me, and I could hear his breathing, fast and shallow. The tactical team had their weapons raised but weren't firing, all of them frozen in place, watching these impossible things. Let us see them, I said. Let us see Martinez and Chen, prove they're alive. The figure lowered its arm, turned toward the structure. For a moment, nothing happened. Then two more figures emerged from the dark openings, and these were different. Shorter, more human proportions, wearing the remains of Border Patrol uniforms. But they'd changed. Their skin had a pale quality to it, almost luminescent, and they moved with that same gliding motion as the others. When they got close enough, I could see their faces, and my stomach dropped. Martinez and Chen, recognizable but altered, their features somehow sharper, their eyes completely black, no whites visible at all. They looked at us, and I wasn't sure they even recognized us as their former colleagues. What did you do to them? Vera demanded, her voice breaking. Nothing. They chose. They opened themselves to the becoming, and now they are between, as we are. They are home. This isn't their home. They're human. They belong with us. They were human, now they are more. They see the spaces between moments, walk the paths between places. They are free of the prison of singular time, singular place. They are home. I wanted to argue, wanted to demand their return, but looking at Martinez and Chen, at what they'd become, I knew it was pointless. Whatever process had transformed them, it wasn't something that could be reversed. They weren't human anymore, not in any meaningful sense. Why? I asked. Why take them? Why not just leave us alone? The door is opening wider. Your time approaches the convergence. We prepare the way, gather those who can become, who can help your kind when the change comes. They volunteered. They understood. Others will volunteer too. The figure raised its arm again, and this time it was pointing directly at me. You could become. You have the sight. You see what others do not. You could be between, could help when the convergence comes. I felt that pull, that same sensation I'd experienced standing in the circle of wet footprints. An invitation, a promise of understanding, of seeing beyond the narrow limits of normal human perception. For a moment, I was tempted. Then Vera grabbed my arm, pulling me back, and the spell broke. We're leaving, she said firmly. Everyone, back to the vehicles, now. We retreated, moving carefully, keeping our eyes on the figures. They didn't follow, just stood there watching us go. When we reached the vehicles, I looked back one last time. Martinez and Chen were still visible, standing with the others near the structure. As I watched, they raised their hands in unison, a gesture that might have been a wave or a blessing or just acknowledgement. Then the white light flared again, and when it cleared, they were gone. All of them, the figures and the structure itself, just gone like they'd been erased from the world. The ground was still wet, still covered in those impossible footprints, but the structure, that door between places, had vanished. We drove back to the border in silence, everyone processing what we'd seen, trying to fit it into some framework that made sense. The unconscious federale woke up about halfway back, confused and disoriented, but physically unharmed. He couldn't remember anything after approaching the structure, had no memory of what happened to him. By the time we reached mile 46, it was almost dawn. We debriefed, gave initial statements, began the long process of documenting what had occurred. But I knew, even as I was doing it, that most of the official report would never capture the truth of what we'd encountered. How do you report that 2 federal agents have been transformed into something non-human? How do you document a structure that defies physics and disappears without a trace? How do you explain to the families of Martinez and Chen that their loved ones aren't dead, but they're not coming home either? I spent 3 days in meetings, being questioned by people from Washington, being evaluated by psychologists, giving testimony that I knew sounded insane. They showed me the photos from the site, the video footage, all the documentation we'd gathered. Everything was there, undeniable evidence of what we'd seen, but already the explanations were being crafted. Mass hallucination caused by unidentified chemicals in the desert air. Natural gas seepage that created visual distortions and affected brain function. Elaborate hoax perpetrated by persons unknown for purposes that remained unclear. The official story being prepared didn't include doors between worlds or beings that existed in the spaces between moments. It didn't include the transformation of 2 federal agents into something that was no longer human. On the 4th day, I was told to take administrative leave while the investigation continued. It wasn't a punishment, they said, just standard procedure. I needed rest, needed to process what I'd experienced. I went home, tried to sleep, couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that structure, those figures, Martinez and Chen with their black eyes and 2 smooth movements. On the 5th night, I woke at 3:16 a.m. Exactly 3:16, the same time the Border Patrol truck cameras had failed, the same time the footprints had dried up. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and felt something watching me. I got up, walked through my dark house to the back door, and stepped outside. The desert stretched away from my property, empty and still under the stars. But something was different. The air felt charged, electric, like a storm was coming. And in the distance, maybe a mile away, I saw a light, white and steady, pulsing in a rhythm I recognized. The door was opening again. Here, on the U.S. side, much closer to civilization than mile 46, they were coming through, those beings that existed between moments, and they were looking for more volunteers. I could feel that pull again, stronger now. The invitation to become, to see beyond the limitations of human perception, to understand the convergence they kept mentioning. Part of me wanted to walk toward that light, to see what Martinez and Chen had seen, to become what they'd become. Instead, I went back inside, locked the door, and called Vera. "They're back," I said when she answered. "Or they never left. There's a light in the desert, same as before. Where?" I gave her the location, heard her mobilizing a response team, but I knew it wouldn't matter. By the time anyone got there, the light would be gone, the door would close, and there'd be nothing but wet footprints and questions. I've been on administrative leave for 3 weeks now. The official investigation is ongoing, but I already know what the conclusion will be. Inconclusive results, insufficient evidence to determine what happened to Martinez and Chen. Case closed pending new information. But I also know the truth. The door in the desert is real. The beings that come through it are real. And they're gathering people, preparing for something they call the convergence. Some event that will change everything. I don't know when it will happen. Could be tomorrow, could be 100 years from now. But it's coming, and when it does, the people they've taken, the ones who've become something between human and whatever these beings are, they'll be the bridge between our world and theirs. Martinez and Chen aren't lost. They're not dead. They're just ahead of us, waiting on the other side of a door that most people can't see. I still work for the FBI, still investigate cases along the border, but I carry something with me now, an awareness that there are things happening in the spaces we don't look at, doors opening in places we think are empty. And sometimes, late at night when I'm out in the desert, I see them. Tall figures standing on the horizon, watching. Wet footprints appearing in the dry sand, leading nowhere and everywhere. Lights in the sky that pulse with that familiar rhythm. The door is always there. We just choose not to see it. Until we do. Until we're ready to become.